Chapter 2095. It really isn't an exaggeration. When she occasionally curls her lips into a smile, several men have fainted from her charms. Ian thought for a moment and said, I don't know where this woman came from, but she was able to attract so many butterflies in such a cold winter. This subject has never seen anything like this before. If there is a chance, I would like to see this scene again. He sneered and closed his eyes. His eyes were slightly red. There will definitely be a chance. Ian said softly, the inn she's staying in right now is the inn my father owns. I heard Xiao Yu say that she's looking for someone, but this subject doesn't know who she's looking for. When he said this, he inexplicably missed Xiao Yu. He felt that if this girl kept appearing in front of him, it would annoy him, but if she didn't appear in front of him, he would feel an inexplicable sense of loneliness in his heart. Not enough. We'll talk about it in 3 days. Feng Qinch's cold eyes narrowed, and her voice was as cold as water. He really did want to recall the scene from 7 years ago. On the day that her death anniversary was about to arrive, he wanted to make his heart ache fiercely. Probably only this kind of pain could make him wake up to reality. The reason he was alive right now was not for anything else but to be punished. Yes, death was a form of release for him, but he couldn't be released like this. It was because of his carelessness that she had died in the Eastern Palace that made her feel the safest. After he died, she found out from Ruzwa that she couldn't struggle at all before she died because she had been drugged by a type of sleeping incense called illusory night. She couldn't even move and could only watch as she died. She died while still alive. So he wanted to live. He had to live. Every day, he had to remember what had happened in the past with a deep thought in his bones so that he could live forever in self-blame and pain. This was punishment. Death was redemption and release. It was definitely not punishment. At the same time, in a faraway inn, Luo Qingshan sat in Xiao Yu's palace and listened to her cry intermittently as she recounted the story between her and Yi Yin. From Xiao Yu's words, it could be seen that they didn't like each other at all. Of course, Luo Qingshan, who had a high EQ, naturally knew that the word unpleasant was in quotation marks. After all, she could clearly see the admiration in Xiao Yu's eyes, not disgust. Actually, have you thought that perhaps Yi Yin is waiting for you as well? Luo Qingshan handed her the handkerchief and said, You two are just waiting for each other to break through the paper window. I don't believe it. Xiao Yu's nose was red from crying. He just looks down on me. Since a young age, Yi Yin had always been a supreme existence, and no matter what aspect it was, he'd always crushed her with an absolute advantage. It was only today that she had one against him. However, her heart felt even worse as tears streamed down her cheeks. If he looked down on you, why would he make a marriage bet with you? If he looked down on you, why would he work so hard to win every time? Luo Qingshan sighed lightly, and then she gazed at Xiao Yu as an experienced person and said earnestly, He's a smart person, and he wouldn't waste his time. Xiao Yu was stunned, and it was like a huge rock had been placed on her heart. She puckered her lips and said, Really? Chapter 2096. Truthfully speaking, Yi Yin and Xiao Yu's story hadn't touched her at all. If she had to use a word to describe it, then it was a single word, pretentious. Or perhaps a more general way to describe it was that she'd missed love for the sake of missing it. She didn't like such a feeling. After all, she was a person that would do everything she could to stay by the side of the person she loved so long as there was even the slightest bit of hope. However, she could understand if Xiao Yu didn't understand. After all, everyone had their own weaknesses. Luo Qingshan was able to discern from Xiao Yu's gaze that she was actually a girl that felt extremely inferior. However, she had to make herself very strong. Being strong in the midst of inferiority was actually a very tiring and heart-wrenching thing. Then may I ask, miss, what I should do? Xia clenched her fists tightly and rubbed them with all her might as she muttered, What should I do? Don't be too anxious. Luo Qingshan had a faint smile on her face as she tapped the table lightly with the fingertip of her right hand. As far as I'm concerned, Yi Yin should be even more anxious than you. Xiao Yu's eyes carried a trace of bewilderment, but she felt at ease when she saw Luo Qingshan's faint smile. In the next second, she wiped off her tears and said, You still haven't called me by my name? I'm much older than you, so you can call me Big Sister. Luo Qingqian thought for a moment and said, Big Sister Qing. Yes, Big Sister Qing. She nodded and said, I feel much more at ease after hearing what you said. It was a love that didn't have to be missed, so don't worry. Knock, knock, knock. A wave of knocking resounded and interrupted their conversation. Who is it? Didn't I tell you to stop bothering me? I'm in a bad mood. Xiaoya was just about to flare up when she didn't realize that the person who pushed the door open was none other than Yi Yan. How will you get married if your temper is so bad all the time? Yi Yan nodded politely to Luo Qingqian, and then her gaze descended onto Xiaoya. She smiled brightly at Xiaoya and said, Why aren't you restraining yourself? As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Yan felt slightly regretful. On the way here, she'd been constantly telling herself not to speak to Xiaoya in an educational tone, but she hadn't expected that she'd still been unable to restrain herself. Young Master Yi, you're wrong. Luo Qingqian raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. I'm a very approachable person. I'm much older than Xiaoyu, and I haven't married yet. This has nothing to do with temper. It's just that you haven't met the right person. Logically speaking, she was rather proud, so she was naturally not used to Yi Yan's lecturing tone, although it seemed to be for her own good. In fact, he didn't fully understand Xiaoyu. Different people had different personalities. Xiaoyu only looked strong, but in fact, she was a girl with low self-esteem. Miss, you're wrong. Yi Yan raised her eyebrows slightly as a trace of arrogance flashed across her eyes. Miss, you don't look much older than Xiaoyu. You just look a little more indifferent. I'm afraid you won't understand what I'm telling you. Luo Qingqian shrugged and said, After all, how can an ordinary person like Zhuang Yuanlang experience the things that cultivators experience? Logically speaking, there were not many people in this world who could make her lose in a quarrel. Her thoughts were, You're arrogant and conceited, so I'll be arrogant and aloof. Chapter 2097. May I know what the top scholar wants to say? The tips of Luo Qingqian's brows raised slightly, while a complacent expression appeared in her eyes. After a long time, Yi Yan shook her head with a helpless expression, and then she cupped her hands and smiled. I admit defeat. Even though little Yu is a little impatient sometimes, I think you know her character better than anyone else. Luo Qingqian rubbed little Yu's head lightly, and then she gazed at Yi Yan in the capacity of an older sister and said, I won't be a matchmaker. It's good that you understand. As soon as she finished speaking, she nodded lightly and walked towards the door. Unexpectedly, Yi Yan called out to her. She originally thought that he intended to continue arguing with her, yet she never expected that his words would actually cause her entire body to be stunned, and even her breathing became slightly rapid. Miss, I went to the palace today and mentioned the matter of you attracting butterflies to the palace. His Majesty was rather interested, and he wants to invite you and little Yu into the palace together. Yi Yan continued with slight embarrassment. Even though it was slightly rushed, and it was indeed my fault, I hope that Miss can agree if it's possible. The air was deathly silent. At this moment, if a needle were to fall to the ground, it would definitely be able to be heard clearly. The cold wind blew by from outside the window, causing the corners of her snow-white clothes to flutter, and it blew her hair and the moon-white ribbon in her hair to scatter. Little Yu slapped Yi Yan forcefully when no one spoke for a long time, and she said, What's wrong with you? You haven't even obtained Big Sister Qing's permission, yet you acted on your own accord. That's the current emperor. If Big Sister Qing doesn't go, then wouldn't she be punished? Aren't you making things difficult for her? You're really going too far. Woo, 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 as she spoke. Little Yu actually couldn't help but cry with an aggrieved expression. Yi Yan was stunned. When she saw large droplets of tears fall from her eyes, she didn't know what to do. There were numerous problems in the world, and if he was given some time, he would be able to solve them easily. However, it just so happened that little Yu's problem was a dead end in his world, and it was impossible to solve. Although she often cried, every time she cried, he would still feel stuffy in his heart. It was not a good feeling. Don't cry. If Miss doesn't want to, you don't have to force yourself. I will bear all the blame. He pursed his lips and his brows furrowed. When? Luo Qingqian took a deep breath her eyes trembling. She was nervous, inexplicably nervous. His palms were sweating, and his fingertips were trembling slightly. In 3 days, after His Majesty finishes worshipping the late Empress, we will enter the palace. All right. During these 3 days, Yian's final words lingered in her heart at all times. It had been 7 years since the late Empress had passed away. 7 years had passed in a flash. Phoenix Qianche, are you all right? Actually, I don't have to ask such a stupid question, because I know you're no good. 3 days later, in the morning, it was still snowing heavily, but the sky was slightly clear. Yian led them into the palace through the side door and waited for the ceremony to end. This place is so big. I think I'll get lost. Xiaoyu nervously pulled her sleeve and looked around. Yian's brows slightly knit together. She wanted to scold her, but she took the words back. Miss Qing, help me look after Xiaoyu. The palace is not like any other place. Coldness and slaughter will always hide from beauty and grandeur. Yian looked at the sky and said, I'll go to the main hall first. Don't walk around here. I'll quickly return. Luo Qingshun gently nodded and said, Go. Thank you, miss. Chapter 2098. In the depths of the imperial palace, there were high walls and red bricks. The air was filled with the fragrance of peach blossoms. A few pink petals fell into her palm, and memories flooded her mind. She had come back in the afternoon. She had overcome many difficulties to come back here. She had used all her strength for this short life. She didn't know if she could live happily in this life. Xiaoyu, do you like it here? She nodded slightly. The peach blossoms fell with the wind, mixed with the pure white of the deep snow. It was so beautiful. After a long time, she frowned slightly and pulled back from her thoughts. She turned her eyes and said, Xiaoyu? There was nothing behind her. It was a vast expanse of white snow. Only shallow footprints could be seen. This girl really needed to be taught a lesson. This was the imperial palace, but she had disappeared in a puff of smoke. She pursed her lips and looked in the direction Xiaoyu had left. This search took more than an hour. The further she went, the more peach trees there were. There were 2 rows of peach trees on the left and right side. She didn't know what kind of special method was used, but the peach blossoms were blooming in this cold winter. She walked along the 10 miles of peach trees until she reached the end. There was an ice blue stone tablet with 3 words written on it. Intrudered eyes. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and looked at the shallow footprints not far away. She hesitated. In the next second, the grass to the side moved slightly. Luo Qingshun's cold eyes narrowed. Her cold voice slowly came. Who is it? 2 brightly dressed girls slowly walked out. Luo Qingshun raised her eyebrows. They didn't look like palace maids. They looked at Luo Qingshun with unkind eyes. There was even a bit of jealousy in the unkind eyes. Little sister, I saw a little girl walk in just now. One of the girls wearing an orange dress said, You can follow her footsteps and see. Humph, she snorted, not willing to pay attention to them. The girl wearing a red brocade dress looked at Luo Qingshun with dissatisfaction. Then she said to the girl in orange next door, Yin, don't pay attention to her. She looks like a poor girl, but she wants to fly to the branch and become a phoenix. The girls who entered the palace today were all daughters of court officials. Other than before and after the sacrifice, most of it was to gain the Phoenix Emperor's favor. After all, the Phoenix Emperor, who had left the harem empty for 7 years, was a godlike existence in front of all the women in the world. Luo Qingshun turned her eyes, and her clear eyes flashed across their faces. The scene of Xiaoyu meeting them flashed before her eyes. The image was a little blurry and flashed very quickly, but she could hear the voice very clearly. Hey, servant, come over here and help me rub my feet. I'm tired after walking for a day. Little Yu, who was originally chasing an ice blue butterfly, stopped and rolled her eyes at the 2 people. You're crazy. When the 2 heard this, they were instantly enraged. She couldn't hear the rest of the voice clearly. It was probably because she wasn't strong enough and had used up a lot of energy. Why don't you take a look at yourself before you point fingers at others? Luo Qingshun shrugged and retorted. People who don't know would think that it was 2 mamas who entered the palace. You, say another sentence if you have the ability. The girl called Yin Yin was angered by Luo Qingchen's words. She raised her head and said, "Do you know who this girl is? How dare you speak to me like this?" Chapter 2099. Luo Qingchen unhurriedly caught her hand and pushed her to the ground. Her cold eyes carried a trace of killing intent as she said, "If you don't scram, don't blame me for not leaving you alive." The two thought that the other party was dressed in white and looked like a woman easy to bully. But at this moment, seeing her cold eyes, they couldn't help but feel afraid. You, just you wait. Yin Yin, hurry up and leave." Probably because Luo Qingshun pushed too hard, the woman called Wang Yan's arm rubbed against the ground under the snow, causing them to be extremely frightened. They were afraid that if they stayed here, their lives would be in danger. It was better to call for reinforcements as soon as possible. After all, Wang Yan's father was the daughter of a second-rank official and had some influence in the court. It was very easy to kill an ordinary person who was not pleasing to the eye. Seeing the two of them walk far away, Luo Qingshun looked at the ground that was covered in snow. The footprints were so shallow that they could not be seen. She did not hesitate, and her right hand directly summoned the Phoenix Dance sword from her spatial pocket. With a forceful wave, she split the stone tablet in half. Actually, she knew what kind of place it was. Even if she was not completely sure, there was only one possibility for there to be such a peaceful place in the palace filled with peach trees. This was the cemetery, a cemetery where the bodies of the deceased were placed. The bluestone outside the entrance clearly stated that those who entered would die. This also proved the solemnity of this place and its position in Feng Qianche's heart. Luo Qingshun did not understand why Xiaoyu would walk in here. After walking for a while, she arrived at the center of the cemetery. Standing in front of her was a crystal mausoleum. There were fresh flowers placed in front of the tomb. The colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple increased, making it look especially beautiful. It turned out that her body had been placed here for the past year. It really was a paradise on earth. It should be very peaceful here. Huang Dang. The sound of small stones moving could be heard. Luo Qingshun saw the light green clothes hiding behind the stone tablet. She helplessly said, "Xiaoyu." In the next second, Xiaoyu was startled. She hastily rushed over and hugged Luo Qingshun. "Sister Qing, why did you come here?" Luo Qingshun softly patted her head, as her voice had a trace of reproach. She suddenly understood how Yi Yin felt in the past. He was such an intelligent person, so he was probably not afraid that Yin would cause trouble for him, and he was afraid of her safety instead. Everything under the heavens belonged to the emperor. If Xiaoyu offended someone she couldn't afford to offend, she might even lose her life. Just now, I saw a butterfly flying in this direction, so I followed it for a few steps. Little did I know that when I wanted to turn back, I found that big sister's figure had already disappeared. Xiaoyu lowered her head in shame and said, "That butterfly waited for me for a while. I didn't know where to go, so I thought that since it looked so similar to the butterfly sister attracted, it would definitely be able to bring me back." Towards the end, her voice became softer and softer. Only Xiao Sheng's muttering remained, Sorry, don't run around in the future. I promised Yi Yin that I would watch over you. Wouldn't this make big sister break her promise?" Luo Qingshun pulled her hand and said, "It's fine. We can leave now." Chapter 2100. Actually, Luo Qingshun was quite happy that Xiaoyu said this. This proved that she knew she was wrong and knew where she was lacking. In this world, there were no naturally intelligent people. Everyone was a fool, and they only became smarter as they explored. Xiaoyu is very cute and honest. Luo Qingshun chuckled and glanced at the stone tablet one last time before turning to leave. "Big sister, this place is so beautiful, but if Xiaoyu didn't guess wrong, it should be, did you not see the stone tablet at the entrance when you came in?" Luo Qingshun's eyebrows trembled as she looked at her and asked, "This is something I've always been curious about. After all, anyone who saw those 3 words in the imperial palace should not be able to enter." "Are those 3 words?" Xiaoyu scratched her head in embarrassment and said with an awkward smile, "Those words look like ancient characters. I don't understand them. No wonder, Luo Qingshan suddenly said. So you don't understand the meaning. When I first came in, I met two extremely annoying people. I quarreled with them for a bit, and then remembered that this is the Imperial Palace. I quickly ran in here. Xiao Yu frowned and said, after I came in, I became even more afraid. I always felt that this place was solemn and strict, and there was even a bit of danger. It's not dangerous, it's fine. Luo Qingshun chuckled and said, Big Sister will protect you. This was the place where she was buried. What danger could there be? So what do the words at the entrance say? Xiao Yu blinked, and her round eyes turned. Her eyes were filled with a fervent desire for an answer. Luo Qingshan thought for a bit and cleared her throat. It says, Tenli Peach Forest. Oh, Xiao Yu said with a look of realization. I knew it. Such a beautiful place would definitely have a very elegant name. Tenli Peach Forest, it really sounds nice. At the same time, in the main hall, everyone was dressed in white and knelt on the ground. Long live the Emperor. May the Emperor's spirit bless the Feng dynasty and its people with good weather. As soon as their voices fell, everyone heavily kowtowed. Feng Qianche sat on the high seat, his deep eyes slightly blurred. It had been 7 years. Time flew by, and 7 years had already passed. He didn't need her to bless the country with peace and prosperity. He only hoped that she could live happily in the other world so that he could be at ease. Every year, after the end of the sacrificial ceremony, he would feel sad for a long time. He always felt that his heart was floating, unable to go up or down. He didn't say anything for a long time, until his personal eunuch hurriedly walked to his side from outside the main hall. He leaned over and whispered in his ear, Wang Yin, the daughter of the Minister of War, and Chen Shi, the daughter of a local official, reported that they saw someone enter the cemetery one after another. What? Feng Qianche's lazy eyes instantly turned cold. Just this 1 second of change made people feel that this emperor was full of killing intent. This old servant has already sent someone to investigate, but this matter is of great importance. Lead the way. We will personally go. Feng Qianche tightly clenched his fists as a cold light flashed in his beautiful eyes. An inexplicably familiar feeling arose. When she was alive, he wasn't able to protect her properly and let her die in the crown prince's eastern palace that she thought was the safest place. Now that she had passed away for so many years, there were still people who didn't care about their lives coming to disturb her. Chapter 2101. He originally did not want to start a massacre on the anniversary of her death, but it seemed that he had no choice but to do so. Below the high platform, Yin tightly knit her brows and felt an inexplicable sense of unease in her heart. In the instant that Eunuch Gao announced the end of court, he immediately went to the pavilion in the north. However, there was not a single person there. At this moment, his heart almost leapt to his throat as he clenched his fists and said, This is bad. At the entrance of the cemetery, fragments of the stone tablet were scattered all over the white snow. It was refracted by the sun and emitted a multicolored light. Wang Yin and Chen Shi, who were standing to the side, had proud expressions on their faces as they revealed sinister smiles. Heavens! This, just who was so bold as to directly shatter the Emperor's stone tablet. Eunuch Gao had clearly not experienced this scene, and his heart was beating uncontrollably. He did not even dare to look into Feng Qianche's eyes as his heart was filled with extreme fear. Ever since Feng Qianche became the Phoenix Emperor, everyone in the previous dynasty knew that he had built a cemetery in the Imperial Palace. He had spent countless manpower and resources before it was completed after 3 months. After it was completed, Feng Qianche spent almost all of his time in the cemetery except for court matters or other important matters of the country. He drank wine day and night without asking when. It was because everyone knew Feng Qianche's position in his heart that no one dared to enter the pure land that he protected in his heart. In the past, there were a few palace maids or eunuchs who had accidentally entered. The women had their eyes gouged out, and the men had been beaten to death. The Phoenix Emperor's cruel title came from this. Today, there was actually someone who did not fear death and directly shattered the stone tablet he had built and entered the cemetery. No matter who it is, they will never see the sun rise tomorrow. Feng Qianshei's cold eyes narrowed, and the malice in his eyes almost froze everyone. It carried a coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. "Replying, Your Majesty, just now, Yin Yin advised those two young ladies not to go in, but they insufferably arrogantly cut off the stone tablet and walked in." Chunshi saw that Feng Qianshei's expression was filled with rage and deliberately added a few words to add oil to the fire. Wang Yin immediately understood. She rolled up her right sleeve and said, "Reporting to the emperor." Yin Yin knew that this place was a forbidden area of the imperial palace. Yin Yin tried her best to stop them, but they pushed Yin Yin to the ground. When Feng Qianshei heard this, her brows furrowed slightly. He did not turn to look at Chunshi and Wang Yin, nor did he respond to their words. He only felt that it was a little strange. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party had mistakenly entered this place and was being obstructed, why would he intentionally break the stone tablet and head inside? His brain spun quickly. There were only two possibilities. 1. It's impossible for the two of them. 2. The person who went in was an enemy who hated him to the core. Only someone who hated him to the core would disregard everything to trample on his weak spot, knowing that this was a place that could not be violated. "Everyone, listen to my orders." In the next second, he coldly said, "Enter the cemetery. No matter who you see, kill them without mercy. Yes, I only want corpses, not living people." His voice was extremely cold, as if it came from the depths of hell. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Emohu took the lead and said, "Yes." As his voice fell, everyone prepared themselves and walked into the cemetery. Chapter 21:02. When Yi Yin arrived, all of the imperial guards had already entered the cemetery. His heart skipped a beat and his face turned pale. In the next second, he knelt down without another word. "Your Majesty, please allow me to go in and search with you." Feng Qianshei narrowed his eyes and drew the sword from his waist with his right hand. He placed it on his neck and said, "What? Is it someone you're familiar with that went in?" "I'm not sure, but—" Yi Yin gritted his teeth and said, "The two people I brought with me are gone." He also hoped that it wasn't the two of them, but his chaotic thoughts made him extremely uneasy. Of the two people the top scholar brought with him, one was dressed like a man in dark green clothes, and the other was dressed like an arrogant man in white clothes. When Wang Yin saw this, she immediately inquired. After all, this new top scholar was often at odds with her father's views on politics. If she could kill two birds with one stone this time, wouldn't that be a good thing? At this moment, Yi Yin felt as if the sky had collapsed. He clenched his fists tightly and lowered his head heavily. "Yes. Your Majesty, it's them." Wang Yin revealed a gloomy smile and said, "The top scholar's friends are really strange. You went in just because you said so, but you insisted on breaking the stone tablet. Could it be that you don't know that this is a great disrespect to the deceased?" Wang Yan's words of justice were forceful, causing the entire matter to enter a white-hot state. Any smart person would know that she was using this to sow discord between Yi Yin and Feng Qianshei. But it just so happened that Feng Qianshei's thoughts were in an extremely unstable state at this moment. In the next second, he placed the sword in and bright red blood flowed out. Yi Yin did not dodge and only closed his eyes and said, "If it's really the two of them who entered the cemetery one after the other, then I'm willing to use my life to exchange for their lives." From the past until now, he had been very afraid. He was afraid that the carefree Xiao Yu would cause trouble sooner or later. So he had always worked hard and had even spent many more generations of time working hard than others. It was all for the sake of being able to climb to the highest position and protect her when she caused trouble. He was working hard, but he never thought that this day would come so quickly. He hadn't even properly expressed his thoughts. "In my world, there's only a life for a life." Feng Qianshei's eyes were very cold. In that pair of eyes that were as deep as ink, it was as if the tiniest bit of light had been completely replaced by darkness. At the same time, about 500 meters away from the entrance of the cemetery, Luo Qingshun and Xiao Yu faced the Imperial Guards led by Emohu. "How dare you trespass into the cemetery?" Emohu stood at the front with a long sword in his hand. He looked at Luo Qingchen and Xiao Yu and said, "All Imperial Guards, listen to my order. His Majesty has ordered that no one is to be left alive, only dead bodies." Big Sister, Xiao Yu, who was standing beside her, cried out in alarm. Her face turned pale in an instant. Luo Qingchen's face was calm and composed. She looked at Mo, who with half-closed eyes, and said, "I haven't seen you for 7 years, but Lord Mo really hasn't changed at all. Other than the fact that his eye sockets had deepened and his sideburns had turned slightly white, he really hadn't changed at all. It looks like you know me." Mo, who knit his brows. At this moment, his heart was slightly moved. After all, the woman in front of him was indescribably beautiful. He had lived for so many years, but he had never seen someone with such a bewitching appearance. Chapter 21:03. Luo Qingchen did not say much. She glanced sideways at Xiao Yu, who was standing beside her, and said, "You just need to stay where you are, and I will ensure your safety. But even if you know that, it's useless. His Majesty's orders cannot be disobeyed." Mo, who slowly raised his sword and said, "All of you must die. That will depend on whether you have the ability to do so." As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingchen raised the phoenix dance sword in her hand and attacked Mo, who without another word. Seeing this, the dozens of Imperial Guards rushed forward. Some of them attacked Xiao Yu, while others attacked her. But for Luo Qingchen's original body, not to mention the 30 or so Imperial Guards here, even if there were 300 of them, she might not be injured at all. But at the same time, she had to protect Xiao Yu. It was a little unsatisfying, but the advantage was that it was intense enough. In less than a quarter of an hour, the 30 Imperial Guards all fell to the ground. Mo, who used his sword to support his body and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Too terrifying. This person's martial arts were too powerful. The sword in her hand was like a divine sword. No matter what weapon was in front of her, it was like a thin piece of paper that would break with a light touch. No wonder she was able to shatter the stone tablet at the entrance with just one sword. Furthermore, with so many people attacking her, even if she was able to defend herself with ease, there would be times when a person's physical strength would be exhausted, especially in this kind of battle where life and death were determined in an instant. But the woman in front of him had an indifferent expression. She did not even take a deep breath from beginning to end. Her expression was as calm as dust, as if this group of people could not pose a threat to her. Actually, he could clearly see that when he attacked without holding back, the other party was holding back. Towards the end of the fight, he felt very ashamed. "Lord Mo, what should we do?" "Go around the small path and report to His Majesty. Tell him the situation here. Ask him if he wants to send reinforcements or use another method of attack." Yes. Although they spoke softly, Luo Qingchen could hear them clearly in the quiet cemetery. After that person walked far away, Luo Qingchen slowly raised the phoenix dance sword in her hand that was covered in blood and said, "There's no point in passing words around. I don't like to beat around the bush. Come on, let's fight face to face." As soon as she finished speaking, she charged towards Mo, whose direction. After resisting for a few rounds, the long sword still landed firmly on his neck. She smiled and said, "Let's go out. There's already enough blood here. It's the same as fighting outside." Elsewhere, at the entrance of the cemetery, an Imperial Guard with an injured arm rushed out and knelt in front of Phoenix Qianche, reporting to Your Majesty. "We have been defeated." Yi Yin, who was originally kneeling on the ground, suddenly opened her eyes, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. At this moment, the high and mighty Feng Qianche narrowed her ice-cold eyes. A faint light flashed through her eyes as she said, "We will personally come. There's no need to trouble Your Majesty." In the next second, a cool voice sounded in the silent air. At this moment, a young girl wearing snow-white clothes and holding the phoenix dance sword in her hand walked out while holding Mo, who hostage. The moment she saw Feng Qianche, she removed the long sword from Mo, whose neck. She held her hostage for no other reason than Xiao Yu's safety. Peach blossom petals filled the sky, and the air was filled with a thick scent of peach blossoms and fresh blood. Chapter 21:04. Feng Qianche heard this and looked in the direction of the voice. In the white snow, a young girl dressed in a snow-white robe was quietly looking at him with a pair of starry eyes that carried a faint light. Reporting to your majesty, it was her who made Yin Yan's hand bleed. Yes, it was her. She's extremely arrogant and thinks that the imperial palace is her home. Your majesty, you must punish her severely. That's right. Noisy voices came one after another. Feng Qianxie could still hear them at first, but after a while, the voices began to become indistinct. His world seemed to have fallen into a state of stillness. Wherever his gaze fell, it was the girl in the snow-white robe in front of him. Countless peach blossoms fluttered in the wind, causing the jade bell at her waist to ring. The crisp and pleasant feeling was so familiar. He never thought that after so many years, he would still have this kind of feeling. That heart that had been dead for a long time now had a faint throbbing. It was indescribable and unclear. There was a kind of fervent anticipation, but he was also afraid that this kind of anticipation was formed from a deep obsession. After waking up from the dream, it was all for naught. Yin. Xiaoyu looked at Yin, whose neck was covered in blood, and cried out in alarm. She grabbed Feng Qianxie's sword with her bare hands and knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, if you want to kill someone, then kill me. I was the one who trespassed into the forbidden area. It has nothing to do with Yi Yin and Big Sister Qing. In that instant, Feng Qianxie's heart thumped. He could not hear anything clearly and only heard the three words Big Sister Qing. The clamorous noise by his ears came wave after wave. Yi Yin kowtowed heavily to him and said, If your Majesty insists on paying a life for a life, then I'm willing to exchange my life for little use. At the moment of life and death, he did not know if this was selfish or not. In his heart, if he had to make a choice, he would definitely choose to use his life to exchange for Xiaoyu's. Not good, Xiaoyu cried out. Big Sister Qing went in to find me. I am willing to use my life to exchange for hers. Xiaoyu. Yi Yin gritted her teeth, and her eyes were filled with anxiety. Now was not the time for her to be willful. The person standing in front of her was the ruler of the entire Feng dynasty. He was cold-blooded and indifferent, as if he could see through everything. But he only knew that his heart was filled with endless obsession. Because he had no other choice, he chose the peach forest as his home and wine as his companion. We can't hurt others. Xiaoyu's face was a little pale. She looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, I'm willing to go to hell with you. Not because I feel guilty, but because she sobbed and continued. Because I like you. The peach blossom petals slowly fell on her black hair. Looking at her, he gently helped her take off the petals and said, All right, I'll let you down in this life. I won't let you down in the next life. Ahem. Luo Qingshun, who was standing not far away, cleared her throat, and everyone's eyes fell on her. Mo, who immediately entered a state of high alert, and said, Protect the Emperor. At this moment, Mo, who was more nervous than anyone else. After all, the 30 guards he had just fought were all well-trained Imperial guards. But in front of this girl, they were actually so weak. This was enough to prove that her martial arts were above everyone here. If she was an assassin, then it would be troublesome. Chapter 2105. At this moment, everyone in the surroundings gasped. Even Chun Shi and Wang Yin, who had been chattering with each other, were stunned. She actually dared to boldly call out the Emperor's name. Could it be that she really thought that she could do whatever she wanted with a bit of martial arts? This was the Imperial Palace. Even if she was a peerless expert, it was impossible for her to escape. Big Sister Qing. Xiaoyu's face became even paler, and even her lips did not have the slightest trace of blood. She knew that she was conceited and proud. She also knew that she had the ability and boldness that others did not. But she could not call out the Phoenix Emperor's full name. Feng Qianxie narrowed his eyes, and after a long time, he finally walked towards her step by step. Your Majesty, don't go over. Feng Qianxie's cold eyes narrowed, and his entire body emitted an extremely powerful aura, causing the surrounding people to not dare to look directly at him. Only Luo Qingshun. She seriously looked at him like this, a gaze that lasted for 10,000 years. Miss Qing, Don't say any more. Yin tightly knit her brows. Even if she wanted to trade her life for his, it was probably impossible. She did not know why she wanted to throw her life away and had to say something like this. Someone once used a calming lantern to make a wish and said something especially touching. Luo Qingchun slightly tilted her head, and a faint tear flashed through her eyes. Flowers bloom in my dream, quietly waiting for you to come. Holding your hand, we will be together. Silence, silence, a deathly silence. In the white snow, her clear eyes revealed a faint smile. The gaze she used to look at him with was so familiar. Feng Qianshei's body trembled, and he stood there in a daze. A tender leaf slowly bloomed in the depths of his heart that had long since rotted. A few seconds later, a light pink peach blossom bloomed on the leaf. This was the truest portrayal of his heart. Seeing that he did not speak, Luo Qingchun slowly raised the phoenix dance sword in her hand and curled her lips into a smile. The first time we met by the Wei River, we were unable to determine a victor. How about we compete again? Snowflakes fluttered down, and the petals of the peach blossom forest scattered. In an instant, he strode forward in the direction of Luo Qingchun. Everyone revealed a terrified expression. They only saw his right hand gently move, grabbing her snow-white satin belt and pulling her into his embrace. In fact, he had been waiting for a miracle. This was because she had once told her that she was not the real Miss Luo. She was just a soul that had been given to her. The fire burned her body, but it couldn't burn her soul. He was waiting very hard. Every minute, every second, Feng Qianshei, she could feel the strength in his arms, as if he was using all the strength in his life to hug her. It was so hot. He muttered, his voice trembling. I'm back. He didn't respond to her. He just hugged her tightly without asking when or where. She was always the only one in his heart. He didn't ask when she would come back or when she would return after an unknown amount of time. He finally gently let her go. Whether it was the noisy Chun Shi or Wang Yin, or Xiao Yu and Yin who were kneeling on the ground, or the leader of the Imperial Guards, Mo, who, none of them said a word. This was because other than Mo, who, no one present had ever seen Feng Qianshei like this. Chapter 2106. Your Majesty, Mo who knelt and said, this humble one will bring people to repair the stone tablet. He actually wanted to find an excuse to break this terrifying atmosphere, but he did not know that no need. Feng Qianshei's beautiful eyes sparkled as he said, since Miss Qing has broken it, it proves that this stone tablet no longer has any meaning. Hiss! Another wave of cold air was sucked in. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and everyone's expression was filled with fear. The faces of the two tattletale, Wang Yin and Chun Shi, immediately turned pale. They supported each other and could not stand straight. Dr. Xian, take a look at their wounds. Feng Qianshei glanced at Yin, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, even if your feelings are deep and you do not fear death, Zhen will personally issue a decree to appoint a marriage between you two. Your Majesty. Yin was stunned for a moment. There was always a feeling that the situation had developed too quickly, and even a high IQ scholar like him could not react in time. Cough, cough. Luo Qingchun heard this and looked to the side with a smile. I remember that His Majesty just said a life for a life. Why did he suddenly change his mind? She just suddenly wanted to be mischievous and was very happy. He did not change his mind. Feng Qianshei's eyes sparkled with a gentleness that had not been seen in 7 years. He looked at her and said, aren't there 2 lives over there? Once Feng Qianshei's voice fell, everyone looked in the direction of his gaze. The ones who paid with their lives were none other than the 2 so-called tattletale, Chun Shi and Wang Yin. At this moment, their minds were completely blank. They did not know why things had turned out like this. Even if they felt the aura of death, they did not know what mistake they had made. Your Majesty, please spare our lives. Wang Yin immediately knelt and said, Shi and I were just passing by. It was the 2 of them who entered the cemetery first. We did not know anything. Her heart was filled with fear and unwillingness. It was clearly the 2 girls who trespassed the forbidden area. Why did His Majesty not punish them and instead embraced one of the girls? There were countless girls who wanted to enter the harem. Although the white-clothed girl was devastatingly beautiful, she was arrogant and conceited. Just what kind of charm did she have to be able to make the emperor embrace her? So what if she went in? Feng Qianshei's cold eyes narrowed as faint traces of blood appeared in his eyes. He had to thank these narrow-minded people who liked to stir up trouble. If it weren't for them, he wouldn't have met her so quickly. Your Majesty, you must be fair. We are really innocent. I don't know if you're accusing me wrongly or not. I only know that she broke into a forbidden area. So what? In the next second, he tightly grasped her hand. As long as she broke into a place, it's not a forbidden area. He was willing to remove all the forbidden areas in the palace for her. Your Majesty, please let us go. We really don't know who this woman is, so, who? Your humble servant is here. Feng Qianshei could not be bothered to listen to their words. She coldly narrowed her eyes and said, For such talkative people, remember to cut off their tongues before executing them. Yes. Why? Why do we have to die while she, the person who broke into the forbidden area, is safe and sound? Doesn't Your Majesty feel that this is unfair? The moment Wang Yin heard about cutting off her tongue, she fell into madness. Ever since she was young, her singing was especially good, and she had an especially bright voice. Her tongue was her life. Fair? Feng Qianshei chuckled. You don't have the right to talk to me about fairness because I am the law. As for why she doesn't need to be punished, I can tell you. Chapter 2107. Everyone knew that in the 7th year of Qian Qian's reign, the imperial palace finally had a proper ruler. She had a beauty that could cause the downfall of nations, but there was an arrogance in her eyes that no one else had. In a short period of time, she became the Phoenix Emperor's favorite. 7 days later, the Emperor's conferring ceremony would be held. The original mausoleum had also been rebuilt, and it was no longer a forbidden area. It was said that on that day, there were 2 daughters of courtiers who wanted to harm the new empress, but their tongues were cut off and their heads fell to the ground. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey. The Phoenix Emperor's actions were to tell the world the new empress' position in the imperial harem and her position in his heart. Linhua Palace. It was brightly lit, and there was a faint smell of sandalwood in the air. Feng Qianshei had brought over the name of the Eastern Palace, only changing the last word. When Luo Qingshan walked in, her eyes instantly turned red. Every flower and every blade of grass, every table and chair, every place was exactly the same as the Linhua Palace in the Eastern Palace. She was almost stunned. Biting her lips, she did not allow her tears to fall. I rarely come here, but I can't help but come. Feng Qianshei did his best to control his emotions. He took a deep breath and said, When I stand here, I feel like nothing has changed. There is no fire, there is no collapse, and you are still here. That fire had taken away all the hope in his life. No one could understand what kind of willpower he had used to survive. The rise and fall of the country, or the fragrance of the peach blossoms. No, it wasn't. What kept him alive was none other than the story about souls that she had told him not long ago. He was waiting with a faint hope, waiting for a miracle that would make the world laugh wildly. In the next second, he gently blew out the flame. Luo Qingshan was stunned for a moment. The room that should have been completely dark slowly lit up. This was the night pearl she had given him. In this endless darkness, it gave him the belief to live. You still have it. Luo Qingshan closed her eyes, and her fingers trembled as she said, I suddenly remembered the words I said to you when I gave you this pearl. It turned out that my words came true. This is called a night pearl. It will shine at night. In the future, even if I'm not around and there's no one to light the lamp for you, it can still light up your Linhua Palace Hall. After that, every time I thought of what you said, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Did you already know the ending? I don't know. Luo Qingshan raised her eyes slightly and looked at her with tears in her eyes. If I had known, I definitely wouldn't have let Lan Lingxian live. Don't mention this person to me. His face was filled with nervousness as he grabbed her hand and carried her in his arms. If I knew, I wouldn't have let her off when I killed her entire family. Back then, The person who exterminated Lan Lingqian's family was Feng Qianche. Lan Lingqian's father was one of the ninth prince's men and had a high status in the Jianghu. In order to prevent this Jianghu faction from combining with ninth Wangye's faction in the imperial court, he resolutely decided to have the spy enter Lan Manor and wait for an opportunity to poison the water, then kill her entire family. On the soft couch, she leaned against him and listened to him talk about the past. He gently played with her hair, and his heart was at peace. It seemed like there was a cause and effect in this world. It was most likely the sin of Feng Qianche killing Lan Lingqian's family that made Lan Lingqian madly fall in love with him, not hesitating to die with the person he loved. The heavens were very fair. The amount of sin one committed would be the amount of punishment one received. Luo Qingchen could not say whether Feng Qianche exterminating Lan Lingqian's family was right or wrong. Perhaps in this kind of world, if you made the first move, the person who died would be you. Chapter 2108. She slightly closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep in his embrace. But Feng Qianche did not dare to sleep. He would come over to check on her after a while, afraid that this was a dream. He was afraid that he would wake up from this dream and everything would be gone. Luo Qingchen seriously turned over and entered his embrace. Feng Qianche felt his originally peaceful heart become hot. In the next second, he turned over and pressed her down. She opened her eyes in a daze and wanted to say something, but he sealed her mouth with a kiss. She did not know if it was because the night was too long or if Feng Qianche's heart was finally released. Luo Qingchen felt that when she opened her eyes the next day, she could not get out of bed. But today was Yi Yin and Xiao Yu's wedding, so she had to go. She sat cross-legged on the bed with her hands on her hips. She angrily looked at the person who was seriously helping her wash her face. "Don't be angry." Feng Qianche pursed his lips and looked at her with Li Guang overflowing eyes. "We will definitely restrain ourselves next time. What if we don't succeed?" She raised her eyebrows and asked back, "What if we don't succeed? Then we will apologize." Luo Qingchen proudly snorted, "Shameless." She originally wanted to say a few more words, but when she saw Feng Qianche standing there with an aggrieved expression and the surrounding palace maids and eunuchs covering their mouths and giggling, her heart softened. She waved her hand and said, "Next time, you can't take advantage of someone's sleepy state and do that." "Yes, Empress." Because of Feng Qianche's decree, Yi Yin and Xiao Yu's wedding was especially grand. The shopkeeper was extremely happy and felt that he had gained a lot of face. Luo Qingchen wore a jade swirl-colored pleated dress with flowers scattered on it. There was a long silk hairpin on her head, and she walked out in simple clothes. Of course, Feng Qianche, who followed her, also came out in plain clothes. After all, it was someone else's wedding, and they did not want to steal the limelight. But even if they came out in plain clothes, they still stole the limelight from the bride and groom. After all, their appearances were just too high. In addition, there were several ministers who had come to congratulate her. When they saw Feng Qianche, they immediately knelt. "I didn't know what gift to give you, so I just randomly picked one from His Majesty's Linhua Palace." Luo Qingchen took out a luminous pearl from her sleeve and handed it to them. "This is the only treasure in the world." Hey, Feng Qianche, who was standing to the side, suddenly revealed a childish anxiousness. She looked at Luo Qingchen in shock and said, "Why did you give the pearl that was meant for me, to someone else?" "Because the one holding the lamp for you will no longer be Yi Mingzhu." Luo Qingchen chuckled. "You have me. Thank you, Your Majesty." "Thank you, Empress." Yi Yin thanked them in a low voice, and her heart was filled with gratitude. Xiao Yu, who was wearing a red veil, held her hand tightly and sincerely said, "Thank you, Sister Qing. The time has come. Bow to the heavens and earth." There was the sound of drums and gongs, so Luo Qingchen covered her ears and said, "Let's go. I feel that everyone will feel uncomfortable with you here." Feng Qianche revealed an aggrieved expression and said, All right." Light snow floated down from the sky, and he held her hand as they walked through the snow. They passed through large streets and alleys and stopped in front of a residence. Rome Estate. The steward slowly took down the white lantern outside, and Rong Mu Ling just happened to walk out. At this moment, he also looked at Feng Qianxie and Luo Qingchen. 3 pairs of eyes stared deeply at each other. After a long time, he slowly walked over and was about to bow. Feng Qianxie said, "Since we're outside the palace, there's no need. This must be the Empress." She gently nodded and turned to look at Feng Qianxie. "I'm so hungry. I want to eat peach blossom soup. Then give me 2 cups of drunk peach blossom." Peach blossom soup can be eaten, but drunk peach blossom is not something a little girl like you could drink. Feng Qianxie did not look at Rong Mu Ling and directly walked forward while holding Luo Qingchen's hand. "Respectfully sending off, Your Majesty." Rong Mu Ling cupped his hands and bowed. After they walked far away, he slowly withdrew his gaze and looked at the white lantern in the steward's hand. Chapter 2109. The Sky Emperor broke the treasure chest, and countless night, illuminating pearls fell to the ground. "So I saw a sky full of stars in your eyes." Feng Qianxie, the first time we met, she was in a sorry state, but her eyes were filled with an arrogance that no one else had. Although she looked very scared, I knew that she was calmer than anyone else. Even when she stepped on the joyous union bell that was used to worship my mother, she did not show any fear. At that time, a trace of doubt flashed through my heart. What kind of ability did the girl in front of me have to be so calm? Reality proved that she had this kind of ability. I held the long sword in my hand. Although I did not use all my strength, I did not want to go easy on her. I could clearly feel that her moves were very novel, but her stamina could not keep up with her moves. Not long after, I used my stamina to gain the upper hand. She knew that the situation was not good for her and pretended to be weak, showing a cute expression as she begged me for mercy. In that moment, I felt my heart soften. Even if she broke the joyous union bell that was used to worship my mother, I could not get angry at all. However, I knew that although I was a bit curious about her at that time, it was definitely not to the point of liking her. Although, I did not know when I started liking her. The journey to the Snow Peak Mountain was very smooth. Occasionally, when I talked to her, I could see a bit of realization in her eyes. Especially when Dong Liang mentioned the most handsome man in the world, her eyebrows trembled slightly, and she blurted out 3 words without hesitation. "Rong Mu Ling." Actually, although I haven't verified her identity, I can roughly guess who she is after careful consideration. Adding on the fact that she did not hesitate to say Rong Mu Ling, I was even more certain of her identity. The daughter of the court's great scholar, Rong Mu Ling's first wife, Luo Qingchen. Hearing her say this, I felt an indescribable feeling in my heart. However, her next words made my heart burst with joy. She said, "I think you're better looking than him." Since I was young, there were many people who flattered me, but I had never felt that way before. I really hoped that what she said was true. That way, I would be very happy. As we approached the Snow Peak Mountain, the surrounding temperature began to drop. Looking at her trembling appearance in the carriage, I felt inexplicably anxious. When we settled down at a place closest to Shuefeng Mountain, I gave her some money and told her to go to the market and buy some necessities. I thought she would buy something to keep warm, but I didn't expect her to only buy food. Fortunately, I brought a long coat with me, so she didn't catch a cold. I even asked Dong Liang to buy her a pair of shoes to prevent her from catching a cold. Actually, at that time, I didn't know why I did that. Protect the weak? However, she wasn't weak in my eyes. Instead, she was inexplicably strong, especially the way she held the red sword in her hand. Her clear and indifferent eyes carried an aura that ordinary people didn't have. It was probably this kind of gaze that made my heart throb inexplicably. I was thinking that maybe I was thinking too much. When Dong Liang betrayed me, when I was besieged on all sides, I kept telling myself to not care about anything in such a critical moment. Anyone can die, but I can't. Chapter 2110. Later on, whenever I brought up this matter, she would always say that I wasn't gentle enough. Actually, that wasn't the case, but I didn't dare to face my own heart. Ever since I was sensible, I didn't have a mother. The wet nurse who took care of me told me that there was no one in this world that I could protect with my life. You only need to love yourself. That's enough. If you encounter danger one day, You only need to protect your own life. Also, women are a source of calamity. It was probably because of the wet nurse's words that I felt that all women in this world were existences that could confuse one's mind. Fortunately, I was born indifferent and had never met someone I liked. Until, on that snowy day, I met her and overturned all of my past words. At the moment of life and death, she looked at me with a determined expression and told me to fight with the enemy. The moment I jumped off the cliff, I unconsciously wanted to protect her. Even if the person who died was me, I would not turn back. It was probably from that time that I found out that there was someone in this world who was more important than myself and my heart. It turned out that I also had someone I could protect with my life. Just like my mother back then, regardless of everything. In that small room filled with my mother's aura, I told her a story about my mother, Ling Long, and Bu Yi. She was very moved and looked at me with a gentle gaze. Actually, I didn't care about this for a long time. Everyone had the right to choose the person they loved, including life and death. However, I never thought that I would one day be separated from her by death. After returning from the Snow Peak Mountain, I brought her into the Eastern Palace. This was the first time I brought a woman into the Eastern Palace. The servants in the palace naturally knew her position in my heart and were very respectful toward her. I liked this feeling very much. Even if she didn't have a status, everyone naturally treated her as the mistress. Although I was busy every day, seeing her figure when I returned made me feel very satisfied. Actually, other than reporting to the Phoenix Emperor about Ninth Brother, I also ordered people to secretly investigate the matter between her and Rongmu Ling. When I heard that she had been alone for 3 years, what filled my heart wasn't jealousy, but heartache. She was clearly so outstanding, yet she received such treatment. That Rongmu Ling really didn't have good eyesight. After I found out about this, I started to plan my birthday banquet. I have transplanted all the peach blossoms within a radius of dozens of miles of Chong and into the palace. Rongmu Ling was not even willing to give her a single peach blossom. I want the Eastern Palace to be filled with peach blossoms. That day, I invited Rong's son and Rong Yuling. They came with joy, thinking that I wanted to restore their relationship with Ninth Brother. Little did they know, I just wanted to show off the person I loved to them. However, there was an interlude in between. In my eyes, I wouldn't even spare her a glance, Lan Lingxian. But I never thought that such an insignificant person would cause me so much pain that I wished I was dead. That day, peach blossoms flew everywhere. She stood at the entrance of the hall as I slowly walked toward her. My heart was filled with excitement. This was like a ceremony. I was announcing to everyone that the person I was holding was the only person I loved in my life. That's right, I even kissed her in front of everyone, including Rongmu Ling. Her flustered face and flushed face frequently appeared in my mind during the 7 years that I was unable to live or die. Chapter 2111. 7 years. How many 7 years do I have to wait? But I can wait, whether it's 7 years or 70 years. As long as I'm not dead, I can wait. People who always live in darkness can't give them light. Otherwise, when their world falls into endless darkness again, they will be in unbearable pain. And at that time, I felt like that. If I knew that Lan Lingxian would disregard everything to kill her, I should have ended her life on the day of the birthday banquet. It's my fault. It's all my fault. During the 7 years she left me, my regret constantly increased, and my personality became violent and perverse. There are many people in the court who don't like me, but I have never lost a single battle. Some words are useless. Only actions can shut their mouths. Actually, I did many things in these 7 years. The first thing I did was to place the night pearl she gave me in the most conspicuous place in the inner hall. Then, I dismantled many of the useless halls in the harem and built the Tenli Peach Forest. It was probably because of day and night that the Tenli Peach Forest was completed in the spring of the 2nd year. I built her tomb at the end of the forest. It was a quiet place, and no one could disturb her. In these years, no one who trespassed was left alive. No matter if they were old, weak, women, or children, I killed them all. During the court meetings, some righteous people said that I was a tyrant. I directly admitted it in court and cut off his head. So what if I was a tyrant? I had things I wanted to protect, and This was my life. Could it be that I had to accommodate others? It was probably because of my personality that most people in the court were very afraid of me. There weren't many people I could confide in, and Yi Yin was one of the few. He was well-read and overflowing with talent. Most importantly, he also liked to drink peach blossom wine. Moreover, he was the first person I met who could drink as much as I could. We would meet at the pavilion in the Tenley Peach Forest every night. He would tell me some interesting stories, but most of them went in one ear and out the other. Sometimes, my thoughts would have already drifted to the past, and he would have already finished telling his stories. One day, he came to visit me very late at night. With a look of realization, he told me that there were people in this world who could attract butterflies. Many years later, I still remember the state of mind clearly. I only felt that my whole body had lost all its strength. My wrist slipped, and the wine glass fell. I knew that the expression on my face was clearly seen by Yi Yin. It was useless no matter how strong and calm I was. Being close to a king is like being close to a tiger. He is a smart person, so he can naturally peek into my heart based on my expression. Actually, that night, I had been looking forward to meeting the woman who attracted butterflies. My mind desperately tried to recall what she had told me about the subtle relationship between the soul and the body. However, this anticipation vanished the moment I learned that someone had trespassed into her cemetery. As I stood in front of the broken stone tablet, I was filled with killing intent. No matter who it was impossible for them to walk out of here today. Even if Ian knelt at my feet and cried bitterly, it didn't change my mind. It wasn't until M.O. who led 30 Imperial Guards out of the cemetery with injuries. It wasn't until she appeared in front of me in a snow-white robe with a face that could topple cities that my head thumped. My heart that had long rotted to the point of decay had a new lease of life. She had returned. She must have gone through untold hardships to return to my side. When I hugged her, I swore that I would never let her leave my side again unless I died. Chapter 21:12. The story after that. In the 11th year of the Phoenix Emperor, Rong Mu Ling married a wife. Her appearance was average, but her appearance was 60 to 70% similar to that year. He was very good to her and listened to her every whim. The two had a son and a daughter. The son was named Rong Gui, and the daughter was named Rong Qing. In the 16th year of the Phoenix Emperor, the barbarians invaded the Feng dynasty again. Feng Qianxie planned to lead the troops again. Little did she know that someone would recommend themselves. That day, in the court, Rong Mu Ling knelt on the ground and requested to personally lead the troops. Feng Qianxie agreed. In the 18th year of the Phoenix Emperor, the Feng dynasty won 2 years of battle. When Rong Mu Ling returned to the capital, he lost an arm. His face was no longer handsome, and only wildness and age remained. In the 19th year of the Phoenix Emperor, the other small countries invaded the Feng dynasty. Feng Qianxie and Rong Mu Ling both underestimated them. 100,000 troops were defeated by 9,000 troops. The enemy country's military advisor was very good at arranging troops and learned the 5 elements. He trapped Rong Mu Ling's small group in the forest. Reports of repeated defeats came. Feng Qianxie frowned and planned to personally lead the troops. Luo Qingshun did not want to meddle in court matters. After all, women could not be involved in court matters. She was already favored in the harem and did not want to leave Feng Qianxie with something to talk about. But because the local military advisor was too arrogant, she personally went to the Grand Council. After checking the troops' arrangements, she wrote down 10 brocade pouches. She handed the brocade pouches to the suicide soldier and said, "If you can hand it to General Rong, our chances of winning will be 80%. After all, she was not present and could not be 100% sure of victory. In the 20th year of the Phoenix Emperor, Rong Mu Ling relied on the 10 brocade pouches to reverse fate. With only 1,000 elite troops, he defeated 9,000 enemy troops and turned defeat into victory. After the war ended, he did not return to Chang'an. Instead, he found a place in Jiang, Nan, to bring his wife and children over. Yes, Feng Qianxie was grateful for everything he did for the Feng dynasty, but he rejected it all. No one knew why he did not return to Chang and to be conferred a title. Only he knew. because when he opened the first brocade pouch with the number 1 written on it, he laughed for a long time in the military camp. It wasn't as long as the brocade pouch. Instead, it only contained a few concise and comprehensive words. I am Luo Qingshun. When he opened his eyes again, he was in the primal chaos space. Welcome back, host. The following is a summary of the data for this mission. Please read it carefully. Name: Luo Qingshun Plain Space. Deep Palace Wine Drunk Peach Blossom. Mission completion rate: 100%. 50% of the experience points were deducted. The host's final experience points were due to returning to the plane. The original 500 experience points gained from this plane would no longer take effect. Currently, there are 5 items in the portable space: April 5th Exquisite Ring, 9-section Moon Whip, Phoenix Dance Sword, Universal Medicine Box. Permanent ability: Space and Time Freeze, LV 4 permanent ability. Teleportation, LV2 exchange points. 8,000, 1,000 deducted for receiving help from the system once. Base points 40. The host's 35th mission panel is below. In the next second, the image in the bronze mirror changed. Mission level: A. Experience gained 500. Female lead: Luo Qingshun male lead. Yi Xuanji supporting female lead. Yu Bingxin supporting male lead. Defon mission details: return to 1 month before the female lead's death and obtain the male lead's love. Chapter 21:13. This was probably a story that sounded very cold. It wasn't desolate, but it definitely wasn't warm either. This was a world called the St. Luo continent. There were humans, immortals, demons, devils, and gods. In the 33rd layer of heaven lived the Celestial Emperor, the Celestial Empress, and a group of immortals who slayed demons and devils. They all took it as their duty to slay all demons and devils, and lived proudly in their magnificent heavenly palaces. The original owner was just a small immortal among the 100 flowers, the red spider lily fairy. She was the lowest immortal in the heavenly palaces. Her spiritual power was weak, and apart from her outstanding appearance, she was almost unremarkable. But this immortal was very close to one of the 4 high gods of the heavenly palaces, High God Wangwei. But others didn't know. In this world, only High God Wangwei knew her identity. The original owner wasn't a red spider lily. In fact, she had almost nothing to do with it. She was one of the 4 high gods of the heavenly palaces, the blazing fire god. She was a war god. As long as she led the battlefield, she never lost. The Celestial Emperor and the Celestial Empress respected her, but also feared her. After all, she was the only high god who had cultivated for 1,000 years in a forbidden land. She didn't have an immortal bone or a heart. The tribulation that the blazing fire god went through to become a god was much more difficult than those who went through 7 tribulations. But the original owner did it. 3,000 years ago, the holy demons rebelled. The demon sovereign Yishuangu led the demons to attack the heavenly palaces. The Celestial Emperor sent fire god Luo Qingshun and high god Wangwei to lead 100,000 celestial soldiers. They were evenly matched with the demons. It wasn't because the celestials were inferior to the demons, but because Yi Xuangu's son, Yi Xuanji, was the reincarnation of a demon god rarely seen in 10 million years. From the day he was born, as long as he was a demon, his power would increase greatly, regardless of his rank. At the time, Yi Xuanji was only 120 years old, but he had a head of long silver hair. He stood on top of 1,000 layers of black clouds, and his eyes were cold and indifferent. He was not like the other demons who wore black armor. He only wore a white robe. Coupled with his face that would make one fall in love with him for the rest of their life, he was calm and composed, like an elegant young master. The original owner was dressed in a long red robe. His eyes were as arrogant as ink as he looked at him with killing intent. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. Although this was not completely the same principle, she could clearly feel that the increasing demonic power of the demon soldiers and demon generals came from the silver-haired youth on the black cloud. In an instant, the host attacked Yi Xuanji. 2 extremely powerful red and blue lights collided in the air. Fiend gods who didn't have high magic power could only sense the tide for an instant. But in reality, that was a clash between the two strongest forces in the St. Luo continent. In the end, the host won. The red light swallowed the blue light, and the devil army was defeated. The immortals cheered, but only the original host herself knew that the only reason she could defeat Yixuanji was because she was older. The 12,000-year-old blazing fire god had defeated a 120-year-old demon god. It was embarrassing to say it out loud. After that battle, the devil god, Yixuanji, fell into a deep sleep, and the original host also went into closed-door cultivation. However, there was an additional interlude. At the time, the original host would never know that this interlude would become her eternal nightmare. That great battle made the original host famous. Many immortals came to her Fire Phoenix Palace to curry favor with her. Chapter 21:14. Di Fanyu had just turned 1,000 years old during the Great War of the Gods and Demons. At that time, he was only an exalted immortal. After the Seven Emotions tribulation, he was still an exalted immortal. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't become a god, even if he was just an insignificant god. However, he couldn't be blamed. After all, becoming a god didn't just require immortal talent, it also required training. If he didn't encounter any real danger, he naturally couldn't become a god. Inside the Fire Phoenix Palace, his face was like jade, and he looked like an elegant prince. His every movement carried the noble aura of the son of the celestial arch. The original owner sat on the seat of honor. She was wearing a bright red robe, and her eyes were cold. Di Fanyu cupped his hands and said, "Fire God Jiyin is so powerful. I wonder if you can accept me as your disciple." The original owner only said 6 simple words at that time. "I don't need a disciple." The original owner thought that the son of the celestial arch was so noble that she wouldn't treat him so coldly. Little did she know that Di Fanyu came to the Fire Phoenix Palace at the same time the next day. The original owner rejected him again. The 3rd day, the 4th day, the 5th day. This continued for an entire month. Even the original owner didn't expect that the high and mighty crown prince, who was doted on by the celestial arch and empress, would use such a pestering method to force him to come to the Fire Phoenix Palace every day. It was really unbelievable. Finally, when the 33 heavens started to talk about Fei Fei, the original owner asked Di Fanyu a question. "Why do you want to be my disciple?" She originally thought that Di Fanyu would at least say something polite like she had prestige, or that she was very powerful, or even that she was very beautiful. Little did she know that Di Fanyu replied very decisively, "I want to become stronger." Actually, the celestial arch didn't need any high-level immortal arts. He only needed the Di family's immortal bone and some leadership skills to be able to rule in this world that abided by justice. This was the difference between gods and demons. Immortals thought highly of themselves and believed that nothing could go against the heavens. An emperor was an emperor. Immortals would not do things like usurping the throne like the commoners did. However, the demon realm was different. In a myriad demon realm, the strong were the kings. As long as you had the ability to kill the demon lord openly, you would be the next king of the demon realm. At that time, the original Di Fan didn't expect Di Fanyu to reveal his intentions so directly. A faint light flashed in his eyes. In the end, she accepted Di Fanyu as her disciple. She didn't teach them personally, but marked a spot on the map of the St. Luo continent. That place was the Wildlands. In the center of the Wildlands was a pagoda called the Soul-Devouring Pagoda. The Soul-Devouring Pagoda only appeared once every 1,000 years. There were 7 floors in total, and each floor contained a sinner from the devil race or the god race who had been severely punished. Their resentment after death was too strong, and their primordial spirits could not dissipate in the world. Furthermore, the wilderness was a land of death. Therefore, every level of the Soul-Devouring Pagoda had a particularly high cultivation base. The higher the level, the stronger the fiendish demon. At that time, it would be exactly 1,000 years. The Soul-Devouring Pagoda would open, and countless god fiends and immortal cultivators would head to the Soul-Devouring Pagoda to eliminate the demons in the pagoda and undergo their own tribulations. So far, 80% of the people who entered the soul-devouring pagoda didn't make it out. The remaining 20% only made it to the third level at most. Back then, the original D-Fan had said that she would directly undergo her tribulation and become a god after reaching the sixth level. In the world of gods, killing demons would accumulate merit, and one would have a chance to become a god. Chapter 21:15. D-Fan Yu went to the soul-devouring tower as soon as he heard Tian Di's words. The Heaven Emperor was worried and sent the moon-gazer serpent to follow him. The Empress of Heaven naturally remembered this matter. She believed that a god from the wilderness was not a god with a proper immortal bone. Heaven Empress thought that she would not teach her child wholeheartedly. She even looked down on a god like her, but she was afraid of her powerful techniques and didn't say anything. At first, D-Fan Yu had a hard time killing monsters in the soul-devouring tower. Luckily, he was born with a superior immortal bone, so it was easier for him. Although he was still stuck at the third level in the end, his cultivation had improved greatly. After leaving the soul-devouring tower, D-Fan Yu was unconscious for 3 whole months. It was said that at the last moment, the moon-gazer serpent used the soul-leaving technique to help him. Otherwise, he might have really died in the soul-devouring tower. Heaven Empress personally went to the Fire Phoenix Palace to complain to Tian Di. She thought that even if the soul-devouring tower was the best place to increase one's cultivation, one couldn't go there casually. First, it was a shortcut that cultivators despised. Second, there were too many people who died in the soul-devouring tower. D-Fan Yu was the future Heaven Emperor. No matter if he could become a god or not, he was fated to be worshipped by all immortals. He didn't need to become stronger. He just needed to stay in the Heaven Palace safely. Tian Di knew what Heaven Empress was thinking. She smiled and said, "His Majesty can't have you all protecting him forever. If he meets some powerful demons, he won't be their match. At that time, it won't be as easy as the soul-devouring tower. He won't leave the Heaven Palace for his entire life. Even if he does, he will be protected by the high gods." Heaven Empress said righteously, "You don't need to worry about this." "Huh?" She laughed wildly and said, "I know what the Empress means. From today onwards, my Fire Phoenix Hall will set up a barrier. Only those with cultivation above the deity level can enter. The rest will be blocked outside the barrier. What do you think?" Heaven Empress' expression changed. She knew that Luo Qingshan was implying something, but she still gritted her teeth and said, "That's for the best." Tian Di waved her right hand, and a white cloud landed at Heaven Emperor's feet. She said, "Then I won't send you off." In an instant, the Heavenly Empress was transported outside the Fire Phoenix Hall by White Cloud. In front of her was a light blue barrier. The Heavenly Queen was stunned for a long time before she understood the hidden meaning behind the original owner's words. Even if she was a Heavenly Empress, she was not a god. Therefore, she couldn't enter the original owner's Fire Phoenix Hall. At this moment, her heart was vaguely filled with the hatred of humans. In her eyes, the previous owner had used another method to humiliate her. Time passed very quickly. 3 months later, D-Fan Yu finally woke up. After the battle in the soul-devouring pagoda, his cultivation had increased tremendously. The moment he woke up, he sprinted towards the Fire Phoenix Hall. However, he never thought that he would be stopped outside by the blue barrier. The moon-gazer serpent happened to pass by and slowly walked forward. "The Empress of Heaven has looked for Qingshan and asked her not to accept you as a disciple. Only gods can enter this enchantment." In a fit of anger, D-Fan Yu quarreled with the Heaven Queen and locked himself in the palace to cultivate. This cultivation lasted for 1,000 years. When the sky lit up, D-Fan Yu finally became a god after 1,000 years of hard work. Although he wasn't a high god and was only a small god, he was still a god. As long as he was a god, he would be able to pass through the barrier of the Fire Phoenix Hall and see Luo Qingshan again. Reality proved that his efforts were not in vain. Chapter 21:16. However, many things had happened in the past 1,000 years. For example, the demon god had awakened. For example, the Heaven Empress and the Heavenly Emperor had a new son. At that moment, Yu realized that his position as the crown prince was not as stable as he thought. He might be replaced by his younger brother from the same father and mother. He felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. When the original host saw Yu enter the Fire Phoenix Hall, she was not surprised. She only congratulated him. She admired Yu. After all, he did not need to work hard for some things, but he worked harder than others. It was probably from that time that the heart of the blazing flame god, who did not have an immortal bone or a heart, started to throb. Although she hid it very well. Since the day Yu became a god, he came to the original host's Fire Phoenix Hall every day. He loved to talk, but she rarely paid attention to him. She would only occasionally say a few words, but Yu would be very happy. The original host did not care. She cared and looked forward to it. She felt that she and Yu were quite compatible. One wore red and had a cold personality, while the other wore white and had a hot personality. However, the more frequently Yu came, the less time they could spend together. The Heaven Empress finally could not help but give Yu an ultimatum. If he still had such close contact with the blazing flame god, the position of crown prince would be passed to his younger brother. At that moment, Yu was stunned. Although his younger brother was the son of the heavenly emperor, he was only a small immortal. He was the crown prince and a god. He never thought that his mother would be so ruthless as to force him to make a decision and even threaten him. However, this threat was very effective. On the second day, Yu did not go to the Fire Phoenix Hall. The original host was disappointed. However, she comforted herself that perhaps something happened in the heavenly palace. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the seventh day, the more time passed, the more the original host sighed. On the seventh day, people finally came to her Fire Phoenix Hall. They were none other than the moon-gazing god and the Heaven Empress. The Heaven Empress could not enter the Fire Phoenix Hall. Thus, she summoned the moon-gazing god. After all, she could not lower her face and asked the original host to open the barrier for her. The host originally thought that the Heavenly Empress was talking about the matter between her and Yu, so she wanted to argue with her. However, that was not the Heaven Empress. Instead, it was related to the devil god Yishuanji. Ever since Yishuanji had awakened, the devil realm had once again entered a state of great power growth. The number of devil armies had multiplied. In addition, Yishuangu had died 100 years ago, and the devil realm had been taken over by Yishuanji. All the demons and ghosts in the entire St. Luo continent had gone there in admiration. They all wanted to become part of Yishuanji's devil army and become a member of the myriad demons mirror. Then let's fight again. What's there to fear? He was the god of war of a generation. If he could defeat Yishuanji 1,000 years ago, he would naturally be able to do so again 1,000 years later. 1,000 years ago, we lost 100,000 heavenly soldiers. Now we are powerless to fight. What do you want, Celestial Empress? Just tell me. She could naturally tell that the Heavenly Queen was implying something. She didn't like to beat around the bush and hated to pave the way and not get to the main point. The newly promoted Devil Sovereign of the Myriad Demons Mirror, Yishuanji, sent a letter of peace to the Heavenly Palace last night. The demon realm is so powerful now. Why would they give us a peace treaty? Yishuanji said that as long as he is the demon god, he will be on good terms with the Heavenly Palace. The only condition is... The Heaven Empress paused. He wants you to be his bride. What? Chapter 21:17. The host naturally knew that the Heavenly Empress was threatening her with the so-called savior. She didn't want to compromise, but she also knew that if she didn't agree, the Heavenly Empress would definitely find a groundless accusation and push it on her. For example, the blazing fire god had an affair with the demon lord of the demon realm, so she was expelled from the Heavenly Palace. It wasn't that the host was too smart, but the Heavenly Empress's eyes were filled with hostility. She wanted nothing more than to kick her out of the Heavenly Palace and prevent her from interacting with Yu. The host was thinking, who said that immortals don't have emotions and desires. Immortals with meticulous thoughts are much scarier than mortals. The host rejected the Heavenly Empress suggestion on the spot and said, Heavenly Empress, you know that I'm a fire god from the wildlands. I don't have the heart to save people, or rather, I don't have a heart. If you really want to save people, why don't you take the face-changing pill and send yourself to the myriad demon mirror? You, the heavenly empress, said angrily. I'm the heavenly empress. Even if you're the blazing fire god, as long as you enter the heavenly palace and become an immortal, you can't talk to me like that. Why should I respect a person who decided on someone else's marriage on her own? At that time, High God Moongazer was standing on the side with an awkward expression. One was his best friend, and the other was the heavenly empress of the heavenly palace. Moreover, they were both women. That day, the heavenly empress angrily left the fire god palace. The host thought that this matter would be left unsettled and that everyone would forget about it after a few thousand years. However, she didn't expect that the heavenly empress, who was respected by mortals the most, would use such despicable means in order to achieve her goal. The blissful illusion pill. This was a sacred medicine that was kept in the heavenly palace's treasury. It was made from 49,315 types of poisons. Mortals who consumed it would immediately enter a paradise and die a few seconds later. Immortals, or gods, who consumed it would be like the bone-softening powder in the mortal world. It would seal their divine power for a short period of time and make them weak. The blissful illusion pill was created by the blissful high god millions of years ago. He knew that both immortals and gods would be destroyed one day. He was afraid of pain, so he hoped that when he returned to the ground, he would be happy. However, he was in such a rush that he didn't even use the blissful illusion pill. At that time, there were a total of 10 of these pills. After millions of years, there were only 3 left in the heavenly palace. Just like that, the original host was sent to the myriad demons' mirror. When she saw Yi Xuanji again, her eyes were cold. Immortals are all hypocrites. To think that they would use such a method to seek peace. He sat on the high seat with his brows slightly furrowed. A faint light flashed in his bottomless eyes. Oomph. I advise you to kill me now. Otherwise, once the medicinal effects of the limitless illusionary god pill wear off, I will definitely kill you myself. And then, after killing me, wouldn't the people of the heavenly palace get what they want? If that's the case, Qi Yin could have killed me back then. Why did she let me live? At the time, the original host was stunned. So Yi Xuanji knew. 8,000 years ago, when the red and blue lights collided, the host held back. She knew that if she used all her strength, the primordial spirit of the 120 years old godfiend in front of her would definitely dissipate. But in the end, she spared his life. Back then, I took into account that you were just a child. As your elder sister who is more than 10,000 years older than you, killing you was too cruel. Chapter 21:18. Of course not. At the time, the previous host's answer had been very decisive without any hesitation. But when she said this, she could clearly feel the red light in Yi Xuanji's eyes. Under his ice-cold appearance, there was actually a burning heart. Very good. I don't want to marry you. I just want to win against you. For Yi Xuanji, the word wife would never appear in his life, because he knew that love was something that only mortals would have, and he didn't need it at all. He was the second demon god in the myriad demon mirrors history. He still remembered when the first demon god appeared. The sky was filled with purple and red. Even if the heavenly emperor used wind, fire, and thunder to change the weather, it was useless. And he, compared to that demon god, was even stronger. From the day he was born, no matter what kind of battle he faced, he had never lost. He was always alone in his own domain and never thought that there would be someone in this world who could do anything to him. Reality proved that there was always someone stronger. The moment the previous host appeared, his calm heart began to fluctuate. Perhaps it could be said that he felt that he was no longer alone. He lost that battle and fell into a deep sleep from then on. In his thousands of years of sleep, there was a voice that kept ringing in his ears. Someone will come into your life. It's her, but it's not her. She's not in the past or the future, but in a parallel world. When he woke up, whenever he saw red clothes, he would think of the previous host's appearance when she fought with him in red clothes. He longed for battle because only battle could make him feel the meaning of his existence. No matter if he won or lost, he needed a battle. Even if he died at the hands of the blazing flame god, it was fine. The people of the myriad demon mirror only knew that their current demon god was a rare demon god that only appeared once every 10 million years. His personality was extremely cold, and as long as he was in the myriad demon mirror, cultivating would be a special moment. But they didn't know that his heart burned more than anyone else's, especially when he fought against experts of the same level. The previous host understood Yi Xuanji's meaning. He probably didn't want to admit defeat because she had defeated him in the past. But when she thought about it carefully, she found it laughable. Back then, he was only 120 years old, yet he was able to fight her, the blazing flame god. How terrifying was that? At that time, the original owner knew that if another 1,000 years passed, she might not win when the red and blue lights collided. However, since the original host knew that Yi Xuanji wasn't trying to marry her, but was using a different method to duel with her, her heart calmed down quite a bit. She used the name of the blazing fire god to set a time and place for the duel with Yi Xuanji, then returned to the heavenly palace. Yi Xuanji got what he wanted and didn't stop her. However, when the Empress found out about this, she was extremely shocked. The myriad demons mirror's demon, Sovereign, wanted Heaven Palace to hand over the blazing fire god. In order to gain the trust of the mortals, Empress Dowager endured the pain and used the limitless illusionary pill to send blazing fire god to the myriad demons mirror. But why had the blazing fire god returned in less than 2 days? What should we do? If the immortals know that I sent blazing fire god to the myriad demons mirror with the illusion god pill for the benefit of the heavenly palace, I don't need to be the heavenly emperor anymore. Chapter 21:19. The heavenly empress method wasn't particularly clever. She was just making the first move to gain the upper hand. She spread the news that the blazing fire god had sided with Yi Xuanji. Although there was no concrete evidence, every immortal knew that the blazing fire god had gone to the myriad demon mirror and hadn't returned for a long time. This news spread like wildfire in the heavenly realm. Only Wang Yu didn't say a word and drank alone. He naturally knew that the news was fake. He also knew that the heavenly empress didn't like Luo Qingchen. But he had no choice. It wasn't enough to go against the heavenly court alone. Moreover, the heavenly empress was already on guard against the plenilune serpent. If he wanted to do something, he wouldn't be able to hide it from the heavenly empress. When the heavenly empress returned to the heavenly palace, she found that the originally majestic fire god palace had been reduced to ruins. The heavenly soldiers blocked her path and took her down. She was dressed in red and had a blue sword in her hand. Her eyes were cold. That day, the heavenly soldiers who were with her from the Hell Demon clan actually stabbed her with their blades. The war god of a generation, the legend of the heavenly palace, was framed by her own people. With the heavenly empress's strength, she could have escaped even if she was exhausted after a few hours of fighting. However, the poison of the limitless illusionary pill hadn't completely dissipated. When hundreds of exalted immortals attacked her at the same time, she couldn't resist anymore and collapsed. Dressed in red and covered in blood, she didn't disgrace the title of war god and fought to the last moment. She thought that she would definitely head to the god punishment stage and be baptized by Lai Hua Lei Xin until her primordial spirit dissipated. Little did she know that in the darkness, a youth in white was slowly walking towards her. His face was like jade, and a faint liguang flashed across his deep eyes. Master, it was probably at that moment that the heavenly empress fell in love with Di Fanyu. However, she would never have thought that the person who took her away from the god punishment stage was actually the one who pushed her down the abyss. The damage to her body wasn't as deep as the damage to her heart. Moreover, she didn't have a heart, but Di Fanyu made her feel her heart beating. After that, Di Fanyu took her away from the god punishment platform. He looked at her with a focused gaze, and his fingers trembled as he said, "I tried so hard to beg the heavenly empress to spare your life. But you're already involved with the demon lord. In order to prevent you from seeking refuge with the demon realm, what do you want to do? Master, I'm going to cripple your divine power." Ha ha ha. If you want to cripple my divine power, I'd rather have my primordial spirit dissipate. No, I won't let you die. In the future, I will be your armor. I will protect you." At that moment, the original owner saw the tears in Fan Yu's eyes. She thought, he probably treated her with sincerity. That's why he said those words. All right. In the end, the original owner of the body agreed to Fan Yu's request. In this world, if one wanted to cripple a god's divine power, the first way to do so would be for the executor to have a higher divine power than the person being executed. The second way was for the person being executed to force out his primordial spirit so that the executor could cripple him. She watched with her own eyes as the primordial spirit, glowing with red light, came out of her body. A drop of sparkling and translucent tear fell. The world of gods was much more boring than that of mortals. Year after year, day after day, the cycle repeated itself. She had never experienced the 7 great love tribulations, which included the love tribulations. Chapter 21:20. With a heart-wrenching scream, the original host fainted from the pain. When she woke up, her body was covered in red light, and her face was pale. She raised her trembling hands and found it very difficult to do so. At this moment, the scene of her entering the soul-devouring tower in the forbidden savage wasteland appeared in front of her eyes. The demons and ghosts on each level were so powerful that they could kill her soul, but she was never afraid back then. However, the moment she lost her god power, she suddenly felt panicked. Originally, her life was controlled by herself, but now she had to rely on someone else. Fan Yu stayed by her side and comforted her. He said seriously, "There's still me, there's still me." Actually, when he said that, he did not mean it for safety. He did his best to keep the original host alive, not just because of love. It was also to restrain the demon sovereign Yixuanji. This was also the reason why he gave her to the Heavenly Empress. Not long ago, Yixuanji wrote a letter to establish a good relationship with the Heavenly Court through marriage. This round trip would only take a few days. If the Heavenly Court killed the original host, they would be attacked by the demons. However, in the original host world, Fan Yu was a good person. He gave her a trace of warmth when she was at her most desolate. Time passed very quickly. The date of the battle between the original host and Yixuanji was approaching. At this time, the Heavenly Court sent news that the Crown Prince was getting married. The person he was marrying was none other than the blazing flame god, Luo Qingxin. When Yixuanji, who was far away in the myriad demon mirror, heard about this, he smiled faintly and muttered, "It seems that she is no longer my match." What does the demon sovereign mean? The Heavenly Court is so untrustworthy. They said they would let the fire god join the demons, but in the end, they gave her to their crown prince. No matter. Once there is so-called love, there will be a weakness. As long as there is a weakness, there is no way to win. Only an expert who wholeheartedly immerses himself in battle can understand his state of mind. The current Luo Qingxun could not understand her anymore. After the original host married Fan Yu, her life was not bad. Even if he was busy, he would come to see her every day and talk to her. In the past, he liked to call her master, but now he liked to call her Qing heir. At that time, Fan Yu's younger brother had grown up. Even the Empress liked him a lot. Fan Yu was once again worried. Just like back then, he was afraid that the position of crown prince would fall into his younger brother's hands, so he anxiously went to find the Empress. However, what he got in return was a sentence with a hidden meaning. "I don't want to see the fire god without any divine power. I've kept her alive long enough." Back then, it was for the sake of the relationship between the devil world and the heaven realm that he spared her life. Now, the devil realm has already forgotten about this matter, so there's no need for her to stay. "Mother, please spare her life. Then use your position as the crown prince in exchange." After a long time, Fan Yu slowly raised his head and said, "I understand." For the sake of his future heavenly emperor position, he began to deliberately distance himself from the original host, and no longer visited the original host every day. At first, it was 2 days, then 3 days, then a month, then a year. During this long period of time, other than treating the original owner coldly, the thing that Fan Yu did the most was to marry concubines. Not all of his concubines were beautiful, but there was always something about them that resembled her. For example, her eyes, her nose, her eyelashes, and her fondness for wearing red clothes. As for the original host, she was finally disheartened after such a long period of time, but there was nothing she could do. Chapter 21:21. No one in this world was willing to live under someone else's shadow. The same went for Defanyu's concubines. There was a crown prince consort living in the heavenly wing palace. Even though she wasn't favored, she still gave people the feeling that she was an unshakable existence. At first, those concubines didn't dare to act rashly. They could only do a little. For example, they secretly put more salt in her food, or they secretly cut up the clothes she brought to the heavenly clothing workshop. This was actually a test. Not only were they testing the original owner, but they were also testing Defanyu's reaction. The truth was, Defanyu didn't react at all. He seemed to have tacitly agreed that the original owner of the Heavenly Wing Palace could be bullied as they pleased. In the following days, those concubines became even more aggressive. They charged into her palace and used their immortal power to beat and torture her. The one who went the most overboard was a woman who was 70% similar to her, Yubingxin. At that time, the original owner had already lost her divine power. She was no different from a mortal. Even weak immortal techniques were a great torture to her, but they didn't dare to kill her. Day after day, year after year, there wasn't a single part of her body that was undamaged. Those concubines always wanted her to kneel and kowtow, but she always looked indifferent and arrogant, refusing to lower her head. When that face appeared in her memory, Luo Qingchun, who was accepting the memories, suddenly trembled. A war god. She was once so arrogant. In the savage, soul-devouring pagoda, she jumped 6 levels and became the only god to come out of the savage wasteland. She was lonely in her own domain. She had never been afraid, but now she was being tortured by a bunch of stupid people. Hatred overshadowed love in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. Year after year, the concubines tortured her every day until her body couldn't take it anymore. Her weak primordial spirit started to dissipate. In the heavenly palace, if you killed any immortal or mortal, you would be severely punished. Eventually, you would be sent to hell. Yubingxin naturally knew this, so she thought of a way. That was to strike first. She forged the notes and communicated with the demon god. A few days later, the evidence was conclusive. The heavenly queen wanted to kill the original owner. Now that she had the chance, she naturally took advantage of it. Without any investigation, the letter that imitated the original owner's notes was confirmed to be authentic. The original owner was directly escorted onto the god punishment platform and was struck by 10,000 bolts of lightning, causing his primordial spirit to dissipate. The executor was none other than Defanyu. That day, the 33 points were covered in blood red, crazy winds stirring about. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts gathered and were guided by the sword. She closed her eyes, and her lips curled into a cold smile. If she had known earlier, she would have died here. Then she wouldn't have to go through the heartache that was 1,000 times worse than a flesh wound. During those days of torture, she had been waiting for that person to come, waiting for him to save her. Unfortunately, what awaited him was disappointment after disappointment. He clearly knew how those side concubines treated her, but he still did not ask. The promise that he had made back then was like sand in his hand, dispersing with a gentle breeze. At the last moment, she slowly opened her eyes and looked into his eyes. His eyes were filled with endless hatred, which did not dissipate for a long time. There was a rumbling sound as heavenly lightning struck down on her. She saw the smile on the heavenly emperor's face, as well as Yubingxin, who was 70% similar to her, couldn't hide her smile. Chapter 21:22. That day, 10,000 bolts of lightning struck, and the primordial spirit of the war god dissipated. Thousands of red spider lilies fluttered in the sky, falling down like blood-red petals. The 33 heavens that were originally eternally bright fell into darkness, revealing an enchanting red. Because she was already disheartened and her will to live was especially weak, It was impossible for her to spend 10,000 years to repair her primordial spirit. But she woke up 1,000 years later in a place where hundreds of flowers flew, standing in front of the moon-gazer serpent. I finally succeeded. The moon-gazer serpent sighed. It's good that you woke up. The moon-gazer serpent was the original host's only friend in the heavenly palace. He felt extremely guilty about her death. The person who also felt guilty was the demon god from the myriad demon mirror, Yixuanji. At first, he thought that the blazing fire god couldn't keep the appointment because she married the son of the heavenly emperor. He thought this matter would end here, and she wasn't the person he wanted to challenge. But he didn't know that his good friend, the moon-gazer serpent, came to find him and told him some truths he didn't know. Although there was a difference of tens of thousands of years between him and the moon-gazer serpent, experts often sympathized with each other. The moon-gazer serpent didn't say anything and took him to the reincarnation mirror in the center of the unbounded land. When Yixuanji saw that she, who was once a war god, had become so miserable, his heart was filled with guilt. If he hadn't asked the heavenly palace for a marriage alliance, she wouldn't have walked into that forbidden area. How can I save her? I've tried many methods, but failed. Is there no other method in this world? There is. You came to find me because you found it. Yes. What is it? Half of the demon god's divine power. He frowned slightly and said a few seconds later, okay. Of course, the original host didn't know this at the time. After the original host woke up, she was recommended by the moon-gazer serpent to become the spider lily immortal. The moon-gazer serpent gave her a new name, Poppy. After the original host woke up, she asked the moon-gazer serpent many times how she pieced her primordial spirit back together, but the moon-gazer serpent didn't tell her. It was not until she secretly went to the unbounded land alone and used all her immortal power to open the reincarnation mirror that she found out the truth. She was able to survive because she had half of Yixuanji's divine power in her. However, to Yixuanji, this was an enormous injury. He fell into a deep sleep, and the demon race was unable to recover from the setback. The Tian clan was overjoyed. During that period of time, the demon clan continuously entered the palace. The demon clan retreated step by step, suffering heavy losses. After the original owner found out the truth, she felt uneasy day and night, not knowing what to do. That was until she met Di Fanyu again. At that time, he was already sitting on the throne of the celestial arch. But even after 1,000 years, the moment he saw her, he was dazed. What's your name? Poppy. You're a flower goddess? Yes. He only asked 2 questions before shaking his head and turning to leave. But this scene was seen by Yu Bingxin, who was standing not far away. She did everything she could to find out Poppy's identity. Finally, they found out that she was brought to the heavenly palace by high god Moongazer and became a flower fairy. She was certain that this person was the blazing flame god from back then and had found her. On the god punishment platform, Yu Bingxin pressed forward step by step, her eyes filled with hatred. I was the one who sent you to your death. I will never let you come back. Chapter 21-23. This story was very long. She closed her eyes and sorted out all her memories. 6 hours had passed. She slowly opened her eyes and saw a sea of flowers. Moongazer Serpent was standing not far away with its hands behind its back. There was a flash of worry in its eyes. Why hadn't she woken up yet? According to the star power, she should have woken up soon. Moongazer Serpent's heart was very uneasy. After all, it had used 1,000 years and a half of the demon god's divine power to piece together the fragments of her primordial spirit. Why hadn't she woken up yet? Ko. Luo Qingshun, who was sitting in the middle of the flower bed, cleared her throat and said, Moongazer Serpent. At that time, she had just pieced together her primordial spirit, and the red spider lily was faintly discernible. Moongazer Serpent had given her an identity the moment she was reborn, but it had not brought her back to the heavenly palace. Hearing this, Moongazer Serpent suddenly turned around. Its tense expression seemed to relax as it said with a soft smile, You're finally awake. You don't know that you've been asleep for 1,000 years. I know, she calmly replied and slowly stood up. The identity you gave me is not bad. The flower god is my old friend, so I wanted this identity. Moon Gazer Serpent's brow slightly moved. But this face, do you want to hide it? In her memories, the previous host stubbornly insisted on keeping this face, causing the supporting female, Liu Bingxin, to recognize her in the heavenly palace. Now this choice fell on her. In truth, she did not care about using that face. But after accepting the previous host's memories, she could understand the fire in her heart, the fire of loneliness and stubbornness. Keep it. What is there to be afraid of? Luo Qingshun curled her lips into a smile, and her eyes revealed an aura different from normal people. Everything she lost, I will take it back one by one. Moon Gazer Serpent narrowed its eyes and looked over Luo Qingshun, feeling a strange sense of unfamiliarity. Although they had not seen each other for 1,000 years, this feeling was not unfamiliar. Come with me to the 100-Flower Palace tomorrow, Moon Gazer Serpent said. After all, the flower god has been urging you for a long time. All right. She curled her lips into a smile and began to plan in her heart. Moon Gazer Serpent was stunned. It had never seen her smile before. Whether it was when she was still the blazing fire god or when she became the crown princess of Difanyu, she had never smiled. Now, the Plenilune Serpent was not connected yet. Luo Qingshun closed her eyes and continued, "See you tomorrow." All right, you rest first. In fact, Luo Qingshun didn't feel very good about returning to this point in time. After all, she was only a flower immortal. Not to mention her low immortal grade. Even her immortal energy was definitely very weak. Right now, Yi Xuanji had given her half of his godly power and was now in a deep sleep. If she wanted to go to the Myriad Demon's mirror, there was a 99% chance that she wouldn't be able to return alive. There were two things she had to do. 1. Recover her divine power. 2. Awaken Yi Xuanji. Now, these two things were not easy. In that case, the little flower fairy's spiritual power was enough to enter the heavenly palace. Naturally, she did not feel at ease. Ding successfully removed the exquisite ring and phoenix dance sword from the spatial storage. This made him feel much more at ease. Although her immortal techniques couldn't compare to the previous host's blazing fire god, a small immortal like Yu Bingxin or even a high immortal shouldn't be her match. After all, no matter which world it was, the exquisite ring was an ancient divine weapon. Chapter 21-24. The next morning, Moon Gazer brought her to Heavenly Court's 100-Flower Palace to report. There were all kinds of flower goddesses in 100-Flower Palace, beautiful peonies, and fresh jasmine. They were all very enthusiastic. When they saw her coming, they were all very welcoming. Little sister Ing Su. Peony was the first to walk forward. She plucked a peony flower from the brocade and pinned it in her fine black hair, saying, "So beautiful." "Too beautiful." Water Fairy shook her head. "I think little sister Ing Su is more suitable for daffodils, very elegant." With that, she also put the daffodils on her head. "I think she's suitable for peach blossoms, but I think her clothes are more suitable for bellflowers." That night, Luo Qingshun received 99 different kinds of flowers. The fairies of 100-Flower Palace were not bad and were very enthusiastic. It was probably because they were all low immortals, so there wasn't much scheming between them. Moreover, during the night's gossip period, Luo Qingshun also learned about the recent happenings in Heavenly Court. Did you hear? Heavenly Emperor took a fancy to a commoner girl this time. It's said that she's 90% similar to a Xiantian queen. Yes. I also heard that Imperial Concubine Moon personally went to pick her up today. What's her name again? She seems to be called Ninger? Luo Qingshun suddenly opened her eyes and muttered, 90% similar. This plot was different from the original plot, but it was still within the normal range. After all, her appearance would change the original plot. The next morning, Luo Qingshun specially took a white veil from 100-Flower Palace and planted the poppy flowers in a 100-flower garden. Little did she know that she would meet the commoner girl that Yu Bingxin and the flower fairies were talking about yesterday. Ninger? The moment she saw her, she was startled. She was indeed very similar to her, but there was no hostility in her eyes. Instead, there was a touch of gentleness. Yu Bingxin stood next to her and laughed softly. She stroked her hand and spoke gently. Ning looked a little frightened. Her hand trembled slightly, wanting to get away from Yu Bingxin, but she was firmly held back. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and lifted the exquisite ring on her right hand. Yu Bingxin was careless and fell to the ground. Ning hurriedly withdrew his hand and took 2 steps back. Yu Bingxin's expression instantly turned malevolent, but in the next second, she saw a figure not far away. Her malevolent expression instantly turned gentle, a pair of beautiful eyes glistening with tears. Bing Xin, what's wrong? A familiar voice sounded. Luo Qingchen looked at the man in golden robes walking over and gently helped Yu Bingxin up. How did you fall? No, nothing. As she spoke, she looked at Ning and said resentfully, I was careless. It has nothing to do with little sister Ning. In the next second, Di Fanyu turned around and said angrily, What are you doing? Ning bit her lips. Her face was pale. Wearing the luxurious clothes she had just put on yesterday, she whispered, It wasn't me. Didn't the palace maids of Heavenly Instrument Workshop teach you the rules? Shouldn't you help the imperial concubine up when she fell? Di Fanyu's tone was a little unpleasant, but his gaze never left Ning. They were really alike, very alike. However, they didn't have her domineering and arrogant appearance. I'm sorry. She knelt down and muttered. It was Ning-er's mistake. Please don't hurt him. Luo Qingchen knit her brows and doubtfully asked in her heart. Who is he? Chapter 21-25. What? You're saying that the new concubine called Ning, is already married? Did Di Fanyu steal her? Yes. Despicable. Luo Qingchen cursed in her heart. She couldn't hide her anger. Slap. A loud slap landed on Ning-er's face. Di Fanyu used a lot of strength and some immortal techniques. Ning was knocked to the ground. She saw stars and spat out blood. You need to know that you're just a substitute. Di Fanyu snorted coldly. Do what a substitute should do. Don't mention some people in front of me. With that, he took Yu Bingxin's hand and walked in another direction. Ning lay on the ground for a long time without any strength to get up. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and walked over to help her up. Her face was very pale, and there was blood at the corner of her mouth. She said with difficulty, Thank you. Luo Qingchen knit her brows as her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't even thought about the details of her revenge. If she spent time saving someone unrelated, it would only waste her time. Come with me. After thinking for a few seconds, she finally decided to help her. After all, she was forced to come to the Heavenly Palace because of the original owner. Under Flower Palace, her bedroom. In order to avoid gossip, she used the exquisite ring to set up a barrier. She brewed a pot of bilyuakun for him. Just as she was about to hand it to him, she knelt down with a thud. Tears dripped down from the corners of her eyes. She looked at him and said, Deity, can you help me? Your husband should be in the Heavenly Palace too? Luo Qingchen looked up with probing eyes. Although this was only her guess, she felt that it was most likely the case. She could see the persistence in Ning-er's eyes, as well as the worry and longing for her lover. Yes, she was stunned. Her eyes trembled. In the Heaven Region's death prison, near the God Punishment platform, Luo Qingchen frowned and said, How did you get caught and brought to the Heavenly Palace? In the next 2 hours, Ning roughly explained what she and her husband, Xiaolang, had experienced. They had lived in a small city called Hopeless City since they were young and made a living by fishing. Ning and Xiaolang had known each other since they were young. When they reached adulthood, the two families held a wedding ceremony. Little did they know that while man-made disasters could be avoided, natural disasters could not be avoided. A plague suddenly appeared in Hopeless City. The plague spread at an extremely fast speed. In less than 3 days, the entire Hopeless City became a ghost town. Those who were not infected by the plague either ran away or scattered. In the entire Hopeless City, Ning was the only one who was not infected. Her husband, Xiaolang, was already terminally ill. Ning could only pray to the heavens every day, begging them not to take her husband away. Such a request was heard by Di Fanyu, who happened to be passing by. He didn't stop. Life and death in the mortal world were up to fate. Immortals shouldn't interfere too much. Moreover, he was the heavenly Tharch who ruled over the heavenly court. However, the instant Ning raised her head, Defanyu's heart suddenly trembled. She actually looked so similar to the blazing flame god. Over the years, he had many heavenly concubines, but none of them looked so similar to her. He immediately planned to bring Ning back to the heavenly palace. Ning was originally unwilling, but Defanyu used Xiao Lang's life in exchange. In the end, Ning agreed. The heavenly palace was not like Hopeless City. In the huge heavenly palace, everyone looked at her with jealous eyes. None of them were friendly. Chapter 21-26. How do you want me to help you? Luo Qingshun leaned back in her chair and tapped the table out of habit. You and your husband are both mortals. Neither of you can resist the heavenly court. Even if you manage to escape this time, I regret it. Ninger cried. I just want to see him one last time and talk to him. I can go to the Yellow Springs with him. I don't want him to live like this. After a long while, Luo Qingshun's right hand stopped moving. She picked up the teacup and drank all the tea. I'll help you save your husband, but you have to do me a favor. If the original owner's memories were correct, the heavenly court had a treasure called a god's soul. It had been placed in the sovereign palace where the celestial emperor lived for tens of thousands of years. Only the heavenly concubines who serve him had the chance to get close. Everyone knew that the god's soul was used to focus one's spirit. It had the ability to continuously increase immortal power. However, any high-level immortal or god knew that the god's soul's true use was to condense divine power. While it continuously released immortal power, it also continuously absorbed divine power. Right now, Yi Xuanji hadn't woken up yet. As long as the god soul was placed in his body, he would definitely be able to recover his divine power faster. Luo Qingshun told Ning about the god soul's general location and appearance. Then she said, of course, this will definitely be risky. After you get the god's soul, the longer you delay, the greater the chance of me saving your husband. She knew that saying this would put a certain amount of pressure on Ning. However, she couldn't reveal her identity right now. Even if she had a divine weapon, a flower deity of such a low level was no match for the entire heavenly court. According to the current situation, getting the god's soul was the most important thing. Okay, I promise you. Ning pursed her lips. Thank you. They agreed to meet 3 days later. After all, Ning had just been scolded by Defanyu. He probably didn't want to see her, but at the same time, he couldn't help but want to see her because she looked too much like the blazing god. Ning was a smart person. She knew what she had to do to win Defanyu's heart. 3 days later, after taking a bath with flower petals, she put on a fiery red robe. The slight change in her appearance made her look like a brand new person. Celestial Emperor, heavenly concubine Ning requests an audience. At that time, Yu Bingxin was also in the Supreme Hall. Over the past few days, Defanyu had been summoning her frequently. It was probably because she felt that she had been bullied that day. His heart ached for her. What's she doing here? Defanyu waved his hand impatiently. I'm not seeing her. Yu Bingxin, who was sitting to the side, could tell that Defanyu wanted to meet them. Under such circumstances, as the most favored heavenly consort in the harem, she naturally had to show her magnanimity. Then, she would pick on the other party's flaws and make the Celestial Emperor hate her even more. Celestial Emperor, little sister Ning, has just entered the heavenly palace. There are some rules she doesn't understand yet. Yu Bingxin smiled gently. Don't be angry with her. Hearing that, Defanyu said, let her in then. I also want to see how well she's learning the rules. Summon heavenly consort Ning. She was dressed in a red robe that was as pure as water. She wore a pleated moon dress. Her long hair was combed into a bun, and it was a jade hairpin made of rose crystals and begonia flowers. Every step she took was filled with determination that others didn't know about. Chapter 21-27. Ning greets the Celestial Emperor and heavenly concubine. She curtsied. There was no emotion in her eyes. This was what Luo Qingshun had taught her. No matter how scared she was, she could not show any signs of panic. The calmer she was, the harder it was for others to read her mind. After a long while, the surroundings were silent. Ning relaxed. She knew that she had already succeeded halfway. "Raise your head," Difanyu said slowly. His deep voice carried an irresistible aura. Ning nodded slightly. Her eyes were as cold as ice. At this moment, Yu Bing's heart was stuck in her throat. She wanted to say something, but her words were stuck in her throat. Then, Difanyu said slowly, "Heavenly concubine Yu, you may leave first." She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. Her fingertips dug into her flesh, leaving red marks. However, she knew that she could only leave now, because Difanyu's eyes could not tolerate anything except for Ning. "Yes, then I shall not disturb the celestial emperor and sister Ning." She smiled. The moment she left, Difanyu suddenly stood up and walked towards Ning. In the next second, he carried Ning by the waist and walked into the inner palace. She curled her lips into a smile, and a cold glint flashed in her eyes. She suddenly understood what Luo Qingqian had told her. Only a cold heart could catch Difanyu's eyes. In the inner palace, there was a faint sandalwood scent in the air. Ning slowly took off her red veil. Her eyes were calm. "If I didn't know who you were in your previous life, I would really think that you were her." Difanyu's voice was very emotional. 1,000 years. 1,000 years. He went from being the crown prince to the celestial emperor. However, he would still dream of the blazing flame god from back then. He dreamed of her red dress, her fire phoenix palace, and when she became the crown prince's concubine, the memory fragments were very scattered. They spread in his mind piece by piece. However, today, she suddenly felt that she was very close to him. It was as if she could reach out and touch him. Life is always like this. Ning raised her eyes and said what Lu Qingqian had told her, but there is only one blazing fire god in this world. As soon as he finished speaking, Difanyu kissed her without any hesitation. His hot breath flowed between his lips and teeth. At this moment, Ning couldn't help but tremble. She closed her eyes tightly and responded to his kiss. She heard what Luo Qingqian had told her during the operation. The divine soul is a sacred item of the heavenly court. In order to cultivate his divine power every day and night, the heavenly emperor would naturally place it in the place where he slept. "I'll give you the powder in the golden sachet. You can sense the location of the spirit." She had spent 1,000 points to exchange for the golden powder from the system store. As for why she could only ask Ning for help this time and couldn't go herself, it was because a flower fairy like her wasn't qualified to enter the Supreme Palace. She closed her eyes. Her clothes had long been torn to shreds, but she still held tightly onto the brocade pouch at her waist, until a golden light flashed and the divine soul appeared in front of her. Ning didn't hesitate to grab the divine soul. She sprinkled the golden powder in the brocade pouch at Difanyu and rushed out of the Supreme Palace. She tightly held onto the glowing red divine soul. Gritting her teeth, she ran towards the place where she and Luo Qingqian had agreed to meet. She didn't know why, but at this moment, her heart was incomparably calm. So what if she was alive? So what if she was dead? Chapter 21-28. At the same time, in the Heaven Region's death prison, Luo Qingqian used a kind of knockout drug made from hundreds of flowers. She successfully entered the death prison. Xiao Lang was in the innermost cell. He was dressed in white, and his hair looked a little messy. However, his eyes were especially clean. "You are. Don't ask. Ning is waiting for you." Luo Qingqian knew that she didn't have much time. The golden powder that the system gave her was actually used to freeze time in an extremely small space. Moreover, the time was very short. Sister Ingzhu, on the god punishment stage, thunder rumbled and a strong wind blew. Ning placed the god's spirit in her hand and then jumped into Xiao Lang's arms. She was dressed in white and stood beside the god punishment stage. The exquisite ring on her right hand glowed with a faint golden light. She held the phoenix dance sword tightly and looked very serious. "I can't guarantee your lives. However, I can guarantee that as long as I don't die, you won't die." Her words were neither light nor heavy. However, on the god punishment stage, They were very domineering. Even though she wasn't dressed in red and didn't have the power of the fire god, the coldness in her eyes could still freeze everyone around her. You mortals actually stole the god spirit. Do you really think that the heavenly court is a place where you can come and go as you please? A majestic voice sounded from the horizon. It was Di Fanyu. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and slowly pulled out the phoenix dance sword. Her eyes flashed. In the next second, countless celestial soldiers appeared around her. A murderous aura instantly surged in the air. Di Fanyu and Yu Bingxin appeared in front of the celestial soldiers. Yu Bingxin was dressed in red tonight. Under the heavy makeup, she looked very similar to her original body. However, a substitute would always be a substitute. They could only live in the shadows of others. I was wondering why Ning would dress like this to see the heavenly emperor. So it was to steal the god's spirit. At this moment, Yu Bingxin's eyes were full of smiles. She looked like a victor as she looked at them arrogantly. Di Fanyu narrowed his eyes. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. If this wasn't the 33rd layer of heaven, if he wasn't the celestial emperor, he might have made the three people in front of him disappear from this world. Other than her, no one had ever humiliated him like this before. He actually dared to use a strange kind of algebra to steal the god's spirit. So what if I want to snatch the god's spirit? In the next second, Luo Qingchen slowly raised her god soul and brought it to the god punishment stage. A faint light flashed through her clear eyes as she said arrogantly, "Can you take it back? What do you want to do?" Yu Bingxin's face instantly turned pale. Spirits were divine objects. If they fell onto the god punishment platform, they would turn into ashes. Don't you know what I want to do? I'm afraid that someone like you, who only knows low-level immortal arts, won't be able to stop me. Your voice. Di Fanyu's heart trembled. Why did the woman in white give him such a familiar feeling? It was as if he had heard her voice every day. Celestial Emperor, there's no need to fear a mere flower fairy. Yu Bingxin clenched her teeth. She picked up a sword from one of the celestial soldiers and said, "I'll deal with her." Since the other party was so arrogant, why should she take the opportunity to teach her a lesson? It had been a long time since blood had been spilled in the heavenly palace. She knew who Di Fanyu was thinking of. Then, let her become her. Chapter 21-29. Bring it on. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes. Her veil fluttered in the wind, but it still covered her face. She held the phoenix dance sword in her hand. Her cold eyes were filled with killing intent. Yu Bingxin snorted coldly. Her lips curled into a sinister smile as she attacked Luo Qingchen. She was a high immortal. How could a mere flower fairy say such arrogant words in front of her? How could she tolerate it? Moreover, this was the best chance for her to show off. She naturally wanted to win in one move and not let her have a chance to resist. You're courting death. In the blink of an eye, when his sword stabbed at her chest, Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes and jumped back as the killing intent in her eyes dimmed. She waved her right hand. The exquisite ring glowed with golden light and pushed Yu Bingxin down the god punishment stage. It was probably because the exquisite ring's golden light was too bright, or because Luo Qingchen was too fast that no one could react when Yu Bingxin fell onto the god punishment stage. By the time Di Fanyu used his divine power to rescue her, her entire body was covered with countless wounds of various sizes. Heaven Emperor, Yu Bingxin bit her lips as tears fell. She pulled Di Fanyu's sleeve and said, "Don't worry, none of them will be able to escape." Di Fanyu said, "Quickly send heavenly concubine Yu to the godly doctor for treatment." As for the rest, he looked at the three people on the god punishment stage coldly and said, "Assassinating a heavenly concubine is a capital offense. You can execute her on the spot." "No, I want to stay here with you." Yu Bingxin shook her head and looked at Di Fanyu with deep emotions. She couldn't leave. She actually lost just now, so she couldn't leave. She wanted to personally see this flower fairy's Yuan's spirit dissipate and disappear from this world. Di Fanyu, you have to have the ability to do so. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and said, "You were so cowardly when you were the crown prince. I didn't expect you to not change at all after becoming the Heaven Emperor. Who are you?" Defanyu's eyes were filled with anger. This woman's tone was too arrogant. There was always a feeling of not putting the world in his eyes, which made him feel so familiar. You have no right to know. The moment her voice fell, she raised her phoenix dance sword and charged into the heavenly soldiers. One wound after another appeared on her body. Her white robes had long been dyed red with blood, and her clear eyes were bloodshot. Defanyu looked at her in a daze. He watched as rows of heavenly soldiers fell to the ground. He watched as her transparent veil fell from her face. At this moment, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Luo Qingshan stood among the countless corpses of the celestial army, her blood-soaked robes indifferent. She could die, but the scumbag and slut could not live. Yu Bingxin looked at her in disbelief. Her face, which had already lost too much blood, became even paler. How is this possible? How is this possible? Who is she? Why did she look so similar to the blazing fire god, whose primordial spirit had dissipated 1,000 years ago? No, it didn't look alike. It was her. That pair of arrogant eyes were so familiar. She also had this kind of eyes when she had lost all her divine power. She hated this kind of eyes the most. Why? Why could someone without any divine power become Defanyu's crown prince consort? Chapter 21:30. Mas. Master. Seeing this, Defanyu couldn't help but call out. At first, she looked up to her, then she looked up to her, and finally looked down on her. And now, she was back. Sorry, Luo Qingshan sneered. Her pale lips curled up. You're not worthy. No, you can't be her. Defanyu shook her head. Her primordial spirit dissipated 1,000 years ago. Even if she had a god spirit, she couldn't have pieced together a complete primordial spirit. Plus, she didn't have a god spirit. Probably due to the excessive blood loss, Luo Qingshan felt her head become heavy. But in reality, she had already achieved her goal. In the battle just now, she used the exquisite ring to create the illusion of Ning, and Xiaolang. In reality, they had already taken out their god spirits and left the heavenly palace. She gave them two choices. 1. Head to the myriad demons' mirror and fight against the heavenly race. 2. Head to the misty mountain to find the moon gazing high god. Defanyu, how can you be the heavenly court's heavenly emperor with your little intelligence? Luo Qingshan shrugged and smiled. You're the myriad of mortal sorrow. In the next second, Defanyu sneered. He summoned a Tianfeng halberd and attacked Luo Qingshan. She instinctively raised her phoenix dance sword to block this god power. She didn't expect an extreme pressure to appear in her body. Instantly, she felt a sweet taste in her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Host, you can't fight against a god with your current immortal power. No matter if it's a normal god or a high god, they can defeat you. Even if you have a divine weapon, it's useless. Isn't this your fault? If you brought me back to when the original owner was still the blazing flame god, would I still have to suffer like this? Actually, she had already thought of a way out. There was only one chance to snatch the god spirit. She didn't have time to wait. Although the plan was rushed, it still succeeded. Aren't you very strong? Why do I feel like you're about to die? Defanyu's deep eyes scanned her face. Tian Fengjian pierced her arm and said, but your face is really mesmerizing. In the end, he still loved his master, but to him, power was always higher than love. Back then, the thing I regretted the most was allowing you to enter the Fire Phoenix Palace. With your immortal talent, you really don't have the qualifications. Luo Qingshan bit her lips and pulled out the Tianfeng halberd with her bare hands. She pushed it back and said, I'll take your god's spirit. When we meet again, I'll kill you with my own hands. Without another word, she turned around and jumped in the direction of the god punishment stage. Defanyu was stunned. He wanted to grab her bloody clothes, but it was too late. How is this possible? Defanyu's right hand trembled violently as the words that the flower deity had said to her flashed across her mind. Could she really be the reincarnation of the fire god? Celestial Emperor. A weak voice sounded. He slowly turned his head and hugged the swaying Yu Bingxin. Why haven't you gone to the godly doctor's place yet? His tone was a little anxious, and he felt especially impatient. I want to be with you. Yu Bingxin fell into his arms and pursed her lips. That person, it can't really be her, right? No, it definitely couldn't be her. She had worked hard for 1,000 years and finally occupied the most important position in Di Fanyu's heart. She definitely couldn't be snatched away again. Chapter 21:31. Actually, she knew that she wouldn't die. When she decided to use the God punishment platform as her escape route, she asked the system if it was possible. After all, the heavenly palace was heavily guarded. It was impossible to descend from the normal route unless she had good cover. She gave Ning, and Xiaolang a chance, but she couldn't leave. Although jumping onto the God punishment platform was the last resort, it wouldn't be that easy to snatch the God soul. At this moment, she only felt the wind whistling in her ears. Countless sword formations flickered around her, and layer after layer of light blue sword light surrounded her. She gently raised her right hand, and the exquisite ring's golden light circled around her fingertips. Just as she was about to use all of her strength to resist, a red light suddenly appeared around her body, and she heard a voice that was as cool as water, but with a hint of arrogance. "Idiot, damn! Who is it?" As soon as the voice fell, she felt the red light around her explode, completely enveloping her. The powerful God punishment array couldn't hurt her at all. After an unknown period of time, she heard a boom, and her vision turned black, and she lost consciousness. When she opened her eyes again, she was in a sea of flowers. The blurry scene in front of her gradually became clear. I'm awake, I'm awake." Ning was very excited, and tears fell down her face. Luo Qingxin's eyebrows twitched, and she smiled. "It seems that we've passed the most dangerous time." She took a deep breath, stretched, and said, "Of course, it's all thanks to the moon gazing high God's help." At this moment, the moon gazing high God, who was originally standing with his hands behind his back, turned around and sighed helplessly. "You! After 1,000 years, you actually dared to do such a risky thing." Luo Qingxin shrugged. "So what do you think I should do? Become the heavenly palace's flower fairy? Diligently plant Permitha flowers, completely forgetting the name Luo Qingxin, and become a poppy? If she was reborn, but lived in such a cowardly way, waiting for others to recognize her, waiting for others to continue harming her, waiting for all the disasters to befall him, then what was the point of being reborn in this life? But with your current strength, how can you fight against the entire heavenly court?" The moon-gazer serpent looked helplessly at Luo Qingxin and said, "Stealing God spirits is a capital offense in the heavenly court. The heavenly emperor will not let you go. Soon, even this place will no longer be safe." Luo Qingxin smiled mockingly. Her clear eyes carried a hint of helplessness as she said, "Mochizuki, you've changed. Once upon a time, he was also so arrogant and unruly. He was not afraid of heavenly authority or human rights. He only did what he thought was right. Now, the thousands of years of peace had made him abide by the rules and blindly respect the so-called system of the heavenly courts. The moon-gazer serpent tried to explain, but it found that the words were stuck in its throat. It didn't say anything for a long time. It was as if his best friend had exposed the deepest doubts in his heart. The things that he had tried his best to hide were exposed to the sun with just a few words. How shameful! I don't think I need to say more. The heavenly court has done so many dirty and unrighteous things. If you still want to be a god with nothing to do, that's your business." Luo Qingxin opened her palm and said, "Give me your god's spirit. If you're still the moon-gazer serpent I knew, I hope you can give them a new identity." She was a bit angry. The entire world could not understand her, but the moon-gazer serpent could not. They had been born as if they were dead. They had fought against enemies together, but what did they get in the end? The heavenly emperor's trap 1,000 years ago, the heavenly emperor's hypocrisy, the crown prince's indifference. Chapter 21:32. For a long time, the air was silent. The moon-gazer serpent looked at her quietly and said, "Don't worry, I will make proper arrangements for them." "Thank you." She nodded, her anger slowly dissipating as she sincerely thanked it. The moon gazer serpent chuckled. Actually, I am not worried about you. After all, you have half of his divine power in your body. You should be able to feel it when I want to jump off the god punishment platform. Luo Qingchun was surprised when she heard this. She suddenly heard a voice that was as cool as water and proud as a water. You mean? Luo Qingchun was shocked. Yi Xuanji can talk to me? Heavens! Is this for real? Not only can he talk to you, he can also guess your thoughts better than ordinary people. The moon gazer serpent chuckled. So the one who will protect you from the god punishment tower will not be me, but him. Is it that scary? Luo Qingchun blinked, thinking, what is the difference between this and the second system? Of course there is a difference. The system knows the host's thoughts 100%. The male lead can only guess. Okay? While replying in a robotic voice, it proudly spread out its non-existent hands. It seems that there are gains and losses in everything. While obtaining the demon god's divine power, she also had to be spied on by his divine power. But this is also good. Since you have half of Yi Xuanji's divine power, I will be more at ease going to the myriad demon mirror. The moon gazer serpent's right hand turned into Chu Shun's soul. Give it to him yourself. He will probably tell you where to go. Luo Qingchun frowned slightly, then nodded and shook her head. Give the soul to him for me. I have a more important place to go. Her eyes were very resolute, because at this moment, whether it was her or the original host, they had to fight to the death. Where are you going now? The moon gazer serpent frowned. The heavenly court will definitely send people to kill you. Even if they know they can't get the soul back, they will not let you go. So high god moon gazing's meaning is that as long as I join the demon race and become a member of the myriad demon mirror, I won't be hunted by the heavenly court? Luo Qingchun gave a soft laugh with a faint as water smile in her eyes. At the very least, hiding in the myriad demon's mirror is the only way out. The moon gazer serpent spoke with absolute certainty. He couldn't understand Luo Qingchun in front of him. She was still as arrogant as before, with a unique aura. However, there was something not quite right. For example, there was an additional inexplicable firmness. There was less indifference that kept people 1,000 miles away. Initially, Blazing Fire God was just cold. However, after meeting Di Fanyu, she gradually changed. There were many strange things that he couldn't decide on. He would always think about it, but in the end, he could only compromise. But now, the look in her eyes gave him the feeling that she already had a plan for the whole thing, and she was just moving forward step by step according to her plan. Actually, you're right. If I bring my divine soul and half of Yi Xianji's divine power to the 10,000 demons mirror, not only will I be protected, I will also be supported by all the demons in the 10,000 demons mirror. After all, I am someone who is going to save their demon lord. Luo Qingchun said with a smile, but in my dictionary, there is no hiding. She could go to the myriad demons mirror, she could fight against the heavenly court, but she definitely wouldn't use this identity, the identity of a flower fairy. Since she wanted revenge, she had nothing to fear. Since the original host became a god, she could do it too. Then where do you want to go? Chapter 21:33. The Return of the King was the ending she wanted. She wanted everyone in the heavenly court to know that Di Fanyu had used the original owner's sincerity to destroy her divine power. Now, she was going to take it back one by one. Of course, the first thing she had to take back was her divine power. Well said. The pleasant voice sounded again. Luo Qingchun rolled her eyes and said, Don't eavesdrop on me. What did you say? The moon gazer serpent clearly didn't understand who she was talking to. It took a while to react and chuckle. It seems that the divine power he gave you worked. Humph. Luo Qingchun snorted and said angrily, When I finish the soul-devouring pagoda, I will definitely return the divine power to him. Being able to let others hear her and feel her feelings was very strange. Okay? I never take back what I've given away so easily. Yi Xuanji immediately replied when he heard what she said. That pleasant voice seemed to be close to her ear. When it slowly sounded, it really made her tremble, because it was really pretty good. After saying goodbye to Ning, and Xiaolang, Luo Qingshun and the moon-gazer serpent set off together. He headed towards the myriad demon mirror, while she headed towards the wilderness. Ever since she became the blazing flame god, the original owner hadn't come to the wilderness for nearly 1,000 years. When she first entered the soul-devouring pagoda with a sapphire sword, no one thought highly of her. Some demons even laughed at her, thinking that she was neither a demon nor an immortal. She was simply courting death by entering the soul-devouring pagoda. With her abilities, she probably wouldn't even be able to pass the first level. Little did they know that the original owner was like an unyielding warrior. She didn't care about her wounds or the stain of her blood. There was only killing in her eyes. She killed her way from the first level to the second, then the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. No one knew if she was dead or alive. They only knew that she was the only one who reached the fourth level in the soul-devouring pagoda. The rest of the people were either injured or dead. No one knew what had happened inside. Had her soul already dissipated, or was she still fighting? 7 days later, a white light shot into the sky from the top of the soul-devouring pagoda. Be it mortals, immortals, or devils, none of them could look directly at that light. Only gods could, because that was the light of godhood. When the heavenly court found out about this, they immediately sent a large number of immortals to invite her into the 33 heavens. In order to keep this god, the heavenly emperor at that time had specially built the Fire Phoenix Hall for her. No one in the Fire Phoenix Hall was bound by the heavenly rules. No matter if it was the palace maids of the heavenly court or her disciples, they were all under her personal control. At that time, the original owner didn't care and went to the heavenly palace with them. In the days that followed, she participated in countless battles, slaying demons and devils, and became the only god of war in the heavenly palace. Countless immortals in the heavenly palace worshipped her and respected her. Some immortals even believed that only someone like her was qualified to lead the heavenly realm, and it was impossible for there to be two kings in the 33 heavens. The more dazzling she was at that time, the more the celestial emperor couldn't tolerate her. Along the way, Luo Qingshun was thinking about what had happened in the past. Occasionally, he would mutter something, and someone would respond. Soul-devouring pagoda, you can wait for me to go with you. When the plenilune serpent sends the soul over, I only need to go into seclusion for 49 days. Then I can go to the wilderness to find you. But I want you to find me. I could do it myself. Fool, with your current immortal power, it's very difficult for you to enter the soul-devouring pagoda. Be good and wait for me.